And then when they turned the lights on, when Nancy Pelosi turned the lights on, our Congress person and senators who were there, I played this song. This is a song that is called The Heart of Montana. And when they cut down the tree, it turned out that there were 144 rings on that tree, which meant that tree, by circumstance, I don't know, nothing is circumstance, that tree was actually the United States of America. Anyway, this is a song I usually do around holidays, and I've been doing it a few more times to kind of reflect upon that moment when the heart of Montana, the tree from Montana, represented our state. After the road, there was chatter in the canopy of the forest dark and green, as the foam burst into the sea. One was cradled by the needles in the bosom of the earth. She lay a seedling for the spring. She broke deep, burned in the roots over 100 years ago. This lady of the big sky lay sleeping in the snow. The season cycle by, it hurts me at night. It's happened to the tree she grew in, perfect shape and height. Culture drifted by, time moves like a firefly, sundown on the picture. She bathed in sapphire light. She's seen Indians and mountain men, and brothers came together. This lady of the big sky, our lady of the sun, is part of the heart of Montana. We sing for you 1,000 symphonies of fallen leaves. The color of you, we brought the heart of Montana to share with you and yours on these holy days. And New Year too, see the earth rise from the moon, the spinning of the touch the sun's accepting rays. Between the time you're looking for, let's clarify the price of pride and glory in the story that we this lady our lady of the big sky, lady of the sun. This lady of the big sky, our lady of the sun, is part of the heart of Montana. We sing for you 1,000 symphonies of fallen leaves. The color of you, we brought the heart of Montana to share with you these holy days. In the year, the big sky blue, happy do what you do. And who of us would have ever thought that before she left Montana for this place, she'd ensure her noble face would be reported with a drop of the phone. Person Montana, 2008 Capitol Christmas tree. I grew up just south. I was born in Providence Hospital in Seattle, Washington. My dad ventured off to Haskell Indian School in the late 1930s, and it was in Seattle where he was discharged from the Navy after seeing combat aboard the USS Iowa, the flagship of the 3rd Fleet. With the honorable discharge, he met my mother's full-blooded German. Met him back in, met my mom back in end of 1946 and 1947. They married. They came back and they ranched for a year. I don't know if anybody can hear. A handful of people remember the year 1949, 1950, when the snows were so deep they couldn't get a plow into the St. Mary's Valley for, I guess, about a month and a half. Anyways, my grandmother also moved out to Seattle during that time. Seattle had the largest population of Blackfeet outside of the Blackfeet Reservation, that Puget Sound area around Seattle. And our traditions were kept alive through our elders. And my grandmother, being the oldest girl in the family, being the granddaughter of Chief Red Crow, would keep alive the old tradition of our people, the trickster stories, the hero stories, the stories of Napi, the stories of Katuis. And this song is a song that is based after one of my grandma's stories. Whenever I look at Napi Point, I think about that story of the long ago time when Napi tricked the gophers. This song is called When Napi Roasted Gophers, and it's a song about the long ago time and a primal notion of karma. Just below the bay that today we call Flat Top, Napi spider and gophers covering each other up with ashen hot coal from the top. They trace mountain, what a good thing to do. Napi's rolled on over asking, can I play? Gophers rolled on over saying, yes you may. Napi chose to be the first to chuckle on the cold, and no more needs to be said, for supper wasn't cold. Except for one expecting mother, Napi tricked the gophers into being the entree at his wilderness buffet. As he placed those crispy critters on a rack to food, Bobcat made a plan the most food. Bobcat pleaded, whoa, whoa, my leg is buggered up. I cannot run, I cannot hunt, this cat's out of luck. Would you be so kind as to share me? But then old man stopped. I'll sing before I dream. I cherish what I got, and it's fair that I got a lot. Just far as the eye can see. Those you do not know, treat a mother with respect, and the future is what you get. Take a lesson from me. I'm a gopher roaster. Napi said, roll up the race to see who eats my food. The first to finish wins the pot. That's my only rule. Bobcat said, oh man, I can hardly walk. then confidently our peace prevail. Not be in heart and his feet ran out of sight. Bobcat took 4 steps and said, here's the finish line. The old man finally made it back to claim his prize. Bobcat's carnivore singers sang this song to his surprise. We cherish what we've got, and we share that we got a lot. Trust far as the eye can see. Those who do not know, treat them brother with respect. And the future is what you'll get. Take a lesson from long ago, when our heroes go first. Learn to cherish what you got, and share that you got a lot. Trust far as the eye can see, or feet can reach. Those who do not know, treat a brother with respect. And the future is what you'll get. Take a lesson from long ago, when our heroes go first. And whatever you do, don't cheat. Our heroes go first. Those two gophers, so we'll be in the second course of our learning here today. The song I'd like to share with you right now is a song off the Buffalo Cafe CD. Buffalo Cafe is dedicated to the people, to the cultures, and the cultural revitalization of the Northwestern Plains. That was a good point that was brought up during the presentations this morning. Our Blackfeet, a large portion of our traditional ancestral territory was north of this superimposed international border. So we have power that is unrealized. We have power that we probably haven't fully recognized at this point. The song I'd like to play right now is entitled Faces the Blizzard. And this is dedicated to the buffalo. I understand that during the course of the next month or two, we have the restoration. We have the repatriation is a better name for it. The repatriation of buffalo coming from Canada. These are the buffalo that were really salvaged from the extermination of the species during the late 1880s and 1890s. And ultimately, first of all, they were transported over to the Flathead, in the Flathead Reservation in the Flathead Valley there. And then when the United States didn't come up with the money to acquire them and preserve them, Canada did. It reminds me of an old Winston Churchill quote. Winston Churchill, the ex-prime minister, the late great Winston Churchill of England, he said, the United States will usually do the right thing after it's exhausted all the other alternatives. So it was Winston, this movement from Canada. Anyways, east of Edmonton, there has been this buffalo reserve that is fundamentally based off the genetics of the bison that were taken from our reservation, from our homeland here. And a group of these bison are being repatriated to our Blackfeet Nation. So it's really an exciting time to be alive and seeing things come full circle, and seeing the maturation not only of our people in terms of government, but also the maturation of our ecological systems. With the recent, hopefully, victory, we're on the verge of canceling, the government is on the verge of canceling the Badger 2 medicine illegal oil leases, and that's about to materialize within the next few weeks also. Good. A little bit more on the guitar. I'm finger picking this one. Faces of history, faces of struggle, was born in a place when the ice chamber wall. A buffalo person, the chief of his tribe, with the grass he was alive. A double-horn entrance, a wooden horn road, in the time, a muscle and bone, bound by with power, with pride and fire, flesh he lies. Faces a blizzard, faces a storm, was the heart of the circle, nature for a colored boy. North of the Mustang, the eastern shore, southward of grass, falls to desert flowing, west through the mountain, backbone you roll, your hooves mark your home. Faces a blizzard, faces a storm, through your time, travel battles you have won. The majesty should grow as the bloodstained cross of progress lingered heavy over this land. Nothing could stand as it had before. But for you, my black two brothers, whose flesh must be reborn, the cloth of creation is scattered war. In your mindset, with every square, divided our homes into property shares. Capital sickness, though you were here, their gift leads to you too. Faces of blizzard, faces of storm, you're still the heart of the circle, nature flow. A covenant home. Faces a blizzard, faces a storm. You're still the heart of the circle, nature home. A covenant home. To the Buffalo Aces and Aces. Been doing this song for a lot of years, and important thing to recognize, I'm doing some workshops at Bozeman later on this week, and next month I'm doing a workshop for Indian Education for All, the state annual conference. But all of you talk about constitutions in the first presentation, about constitutions need not be written, but they were so well embedded within our oral tradition, they were embedded within the principles. They were programmed as principles within our neuropsychology. And we did the correct thing because our minds have been conditioned and our responses have been conditioned to do the correct thing. And this involved a lot of altruistic principles of not considering just self, but considering other people and the generations to follow. This isn't just Blackfeet, this is across the face of the indigenous Americas. Anyway, so all of our stories are part of our Constitution. The story here is entitled The Bear Who Stole the Chinook. It tells about the long ago time when mysteriously, one winter, the warm west wind disappeared. Without the Chinook wind, our people, firewood ran low, the fresh meat ran low, something had to be done. like now, the constitutional crisis. When something has to be done, there comes forward heroes. In this case, it was an orphan boy and 4 of his animal elders, owl, weasel, magpie, and coyote. And together they formed the Magnificent Five, and they ventured up into the mountains to find the bear who stole the Chinook. Everybody give me a growl. Everybody, big growl. Someday when they hit me on the feet, oh, make the women weep. I like it. Our men trapped hard to find no game. In our children's bellies they're crying. Our elders gathered in the heat, and all they prayed and waited and looked. Little did they know that way up high, the bear had stolen Chinook. Everybody, the bear had stolen Chinook. One more time. The bear had stolen Chinook. Ragged orphan boy, ragged orphan boy living alone, calling the animals in his home. I'm the magpie flew on him, guiding the for them. As her counsel led, the magpie caught as her hero shivered and shook. He said, my relatives told me so. He said, the bear has stolen Chinook. The bear has stolen Chinook. Our heroes agreed to release the wind to the west of the mountain days. The caves maintained and traveled up, together they did the same. And the hell should go. The grizzly storm and surely asleep. I'm very close to be lost. They're punched out as the stick. So the same brother was like a quick. The weasel slithered easy through the hole, cut the oak skin back of the throat. The bear in rage would go away, and the bear said, I'm the bear who stole the Chinook. I'm the bear who stole the Chinook. In our friends made letters and smoke, here's the mood in the first of the day. Big older and small backs to see, it's kind of get on me. I'm back when the wind was kept cold to the light of day. The prairie chicken picked stitches up. Now the prairie chicken was a consultant. And the Chinook flew on its way. The Chinook flew on its way. Bring in the wind now. There suddenly from his sleep there said, our friends all let their job complete. Everything pursued the wind. But the warm wind never was against friend. Now the bear sweeps up the ground the winter long in his lodge, he rumbles and looks back to the days of the winter warm. Back to the bear who stole the Chinook. To the bear who stole the Chinook. I'm the bear who stole the Chinook. Everybody, I'm the bear who stole the Chinook. Let's hear those bears growl. I like that. Thank you. Oh, get a little sip of water. Oh gosh, I've written a couple songs, or tried to write a couple songs. And by my second year, I went off to University of Washington. I did 3 years of football scholarship, and thank God those 3 years was the perfect time. I saw the movie Concussion a couple weeks ago and realizing that there's an epidemic of concussion and the brain damage that it may cause. I'm hoping I played not one more day than I should have back there. But I thoroughly enjoyed that time at the University of Washington. For one thing, I was exposed to, when I was doing a research project, there were Blackfeet elders. Farrell Norman is here, and one of our mentors, Herbert Barnes was, he had risen to the level of the president of the Retail Clerks Union in the Puget Sound area, very principled, but he had also, growing up here on the reservation, had been counseled by elders that had been around during the times of the treaties and the agreements of the late 1800s. So once again, the principles are embedded within constitutions. And I was sharing of a lot of things, and my grandmother shared with me the stories. When my grandmother passed away in this June of 1980, at the little flower church up on that little knoll in Bath, Montana, I played this song. I'd written it an hour before. This song is called "Speak to Me, Grandma," and this song is dedicated to the resonance of that principle that flows through those stories, through those narratives, through that sharing that goes on from generation to generation. This is for our grandmothers and our grandfathers. I'm alone in my thoughts. Speak to me, Grandpa. You're right along with the song of the wind blowing at the top of the pine. In the valley of the road, St. Mary, you and Christ turn the rest of your God, and across your fingers carry to the altar. Now I really can't believe you're gone. Speak to me, Grandpa. Stories blossom through you. Speak to me, Grandpa. Legends blended with truth, and your words brushed across for us in the valley of our own St. Mary. Your eyes were the light for us when our bodies couldn't carry us beyond. Now I really can't imagine that you're gone. You felt the buffalo, you heard the stagecoach go, you saw the green mountain rise and fall. You rode your pony home, moccasins of flat and centuries long. The trail sleeping roads, and the roads became cold. You listened to the stories that you told. You went at the door, then 10 fine children came home. And it still is your truth. You were the second of us, still in our family trust. Religion or St. Mary appeared upon the land. It leads me in this past, floating away. I'm alone in your thoughts. Speak to me, Grandpa. You're at home with the phone. There's a wind blowing up the top of the mountain through the valley of our own St. Mary. You were trying to turn the rest that you got and cross your fingers down to the arm. Now I really can't believe you're gone. There's a wind blowing up the top of the mountain through the valley of our own St. Mary. Your eyes were the right words, where bodies couldn't carry must be all. Now I really can't believe you're gone. Oh, I really can't believe it. It's so hard to imagine. I really don't believe that you're gone.
There's a lot more food back there, folks. If you're still hungry, go help yourself. There's lots of extra sandwiches. If you've got someone at home, you want to take a few with you, you're welcome to do that. So we still got about 15, 20 minutes left. Let the people who want to feed, go ahead and take some of that food with you. Again, Jack's done a wonderful job. Let's give him a round of applause, huh?
I was requested to do Ernest Dubray's song, and I will do that. I'm going to do Hudson Bay Blues, and we're going to do sometimes evenings. Hudson Bay Blues, things started. So you talk about the beginning of the disintegration. I mean, we are reviving it now as we, with the language and the culture and the immersion schools. A lot of steps have been taken, but with the coming of the horse and the coming of the fur trade, the horse and the fur trade, the open, wild, global market, and the horse, the equestrian revolution, our Blackfeet accelerated our pace into, I guess, the mainstream of world culture in the 1700s. The Hudson's Bay Company was the first big reason our Blackfeet became the #1 superpower on the Northwestern Plains. With the trade from the Hudson's Bay Company extending north, of course, all the way to the Hudson's Bay, and the entire watershed of the Hudson's Bay was claimed, quote unquote, by the British Empire. But with this claim, there was also our Blackfeet position at the headwaters of not only the Hudson's Bay drainage, but the headwaters at the headwaters of the Missouri River drainage. And this all happens at a particular point, what we call Glacier now, on our backbone of the world, that Triple Divide Mountain, where the headwaters of the Hudson's Bay and the Missouri River complex began. Anyway, with the Hudson's Bay, they gave us the right to shop. We have a quick announcement from Joe McGay.
If you got CEU forms, you're trying to get a little college credit, the BCC folks need you to turn your form in as soon as you can. So turn your CEU form in to the folks over here in the back to get your credit. Thank you.
Where's the city?
Right over here in the back corner.
Okay. This song is called Hudson Bay Blues. I've had more fun with the song over the years because ultimately this is an introduction to the shopping culture.
I'm riding on a pony, bouncing on the plane. Reported something strange. Someone building lodges, making stolen logs, and pushing on their faces and bumping to the bumps. Loading all big bundles, through white wheels on the train. Outside creations and the day. Tomorrow's our man open. Grab your own birds. We'll be the people fixing to tell you in this bird. We didn't know shopping. Oh, we didn't start shopping to the Hudson Bay go. The horses and dogs looking high the skin. Something in the territory we had wondered. Bushy faced knockouts and simple smoking drink. We prepared ourselves like the zombie closes way. When the snow is over, they said, we gotta get to you. Gotta fit your head in and make you struck and happy too. Didn't mind the what the thinking of me, heard that run. Inspired, walk the dimple, shot around and up the road. They got us ready for shopping. Yeah, we were ready for shopping. Ready for shopping. The Hudson Bay Go. We want to think locks, rolls, socks, copies, denim jeans, iron walls, must balls, powder horse, and pretty jaws, blankets, gloves, bolts, flannels, cinnamon bells, towel cans, shirt flowers, dark glasses, covered feet, looking glasses, pale little jewel brandy, my mind and heart got candy, right to the service was awful handy. Oh, we won't stop shopping. Oh, we won't stop shopping. Couldn't go shopping to the Hudson Bay Go. Now we stand next door, Texas Nike Air, give it air, seafood fans, fried heads, turkey, beef, shrimp, span, sales cycles, sport jackets, rollerblades, jean jackets, keyboards, the surfing net, Harmon and Bay, Mystery Car, Pizza Bar, Christian First and Love. Mr. Columbus said it pays to discover American espresso. Every kind of can't stop shopping. Oh, you can't stop shopping. You can't stop shopping. The Hudson Bay Go. Oh, we can't stop shopping. Oh, we can't stop shopping. Can't stop shopping, let's make her In World War II, as with World War I, as with the Korean War, the Vietnam War, the Persian Gulf Wars, the highest rate of volunteerism of any ethnic group in the United States have been American Indians. In World War II, it was no different. From the reservations, from the Indian boarding schools, our young men volunteered almost to the man. One of these young men was one of my dad's best friends growing up. They would ride the freight train to Haskell, the reservation here. His name was Ernest DeBray. Ernest DeBray wound up. Of course, everybody that goes into the Army Air Force wants to be a fighter pilot. He wound up as a radio and tail gunner for B-17 Flying Fortresses. And there from England over Nazi Germany, Ernest DeBray flew 52 missions. Only 30 was required, and you could rotate back home after 30. And Ernest DeBray, after that point, volunteered for suicide missions. He did an extra 22 on top of it. He was awarded a Distinguished Flying Cross, which is a medal of honor for gallantry in the skies, a Distinguished Flying Cross, and 3 oak leaf clusters, which mean basically there were 4 medals of honor for flying. Coming back after the war was no treat, and it still isn't much of a treat for our veterans that have seen extremely heavy combat. Ernest DeBray started drinking heavy, treating the battle. They called it shell shock back then, and battle fatigue, but Ernest DeBray ultimately disintegrated into alcoholism, and on June 12th, 1963, tumbled into the irrigation canal that flows from Lower St. Mary's Lake and drowned in the St. Mary's Valley. 4 years later, my dad took the appropriate action and did the appropriate work and sobered up. Ernest DeBray, this is a song I wrote, and this is a song that for a while Governor Brian Schweitzer was traveling around the state and also playing with to gain awareness of veterans issues.
This song is called Sometimes Equals Have Trouble on the Ground.
We became in the skies above the rising falling day. The bridge on the path, we were young and the dreams should go back home. Somewhere broken, where shadows left behind. Through the green grass of 1942, we missed sacrificing school, only God knew. However, if we would return, our duty was freedom to be heard. Fortresses suspended in the atmosphere, the earth lay like a dream, miles below. German fighter racers cut our crews in half. We fell into eternity in droves from the sky. Missions became memories of all 45. These tastes sweet for those who survived. Casualties of war were over before sun screens of nightmares. It really just begun. If we had the chance to live our lives again, we'd find another way to ease again. Sober circles work to keep our tears down. Our lives could be close to whole again. But sometimes we have trouble on the ground. A sergeant turned the sea gray, and this world parted ways in the night. Below St. Mary's Lake, as a warrior ascended, a native sun went down. Sometimes he had trouble on the ground. Let's remember our heroes, scars and fallen down. Sometimes he trouble on the ground.
Sergeant Dennis DeBray, Blackfeet Indians, most decorated air warrior in World War II. I'm going to slip in one more song and we'll get things rolling here a little bit. We have our Blackfeet Nation flag back there, and there is a ring. There is a circle of eagle feathers. Of course, the eagle challenges us to see the big picture, to rise at the level in our perspective, to see the larger picture at hand. This song is called She's the Circle of Life. So often within our indigenous cultures, there was a personification of nature. We say Mother Earth or Earth Mother, Mother Nature, but that power and that respect that is instilled within the mothers is a very important quality. This is also dedicated to the kinship-centered tradition, the realization, the awakening that we are connected with all of creation as we would be considered brothers and sisters with one another, because all of us come from a common, mysterious power. We reference this power through Natus, the sun, the creative power of the sun. And if we are all children of the same Father, well, it's logical to assume we are all brothers and sisters. So, the song is called Circle of Life again, and I'll go ahead and adjourn after this. There'll be a little transition moment, but I would like to thank you for attending this meeting. And these are the emperors. You are the emperors, and in the different places in your families and community, it's important to spread these ideas and concepts a lot. I think the entire thing will be available somehow referenced on the internet, on the website, so we'll be able to share this with other concerned Blackfeet tribal members, and we have some work to do. Last thing, my dad used to emphasize, there's a saying, principle before personalities. But Dad used to up that a few degrees. He would say principle before personalities, before politics, principle before profit, principles before pride and prejudice. So with that, she's a circle of life.
In the bottomless sea, in the center of the drifting storm, there's a circle from that reflects who we are. From the circle we receive forcing harmony, and every song we know about in all the earth's seas. From the slow cracking behind us, your love flows with the spring. Forever the songs of lover, a songbird choir sings. She's a circle of light. She's the moon of the sun's creation. She's a storm in the wine. She's the harvest of every nation. She's a mother of every life born through each day and each night. With the Father she gave the earth home. She's a circle of life. In our last time we share a sky with those from me, and with birds living beneath the waves whose motion is asleep. All life around stems from the green, in green all night begins. We sip breeze and speak our song when each season sounds. From the struggle back in the highway, the blood flows with the spring. Forever the songs of lover, a brave old choir sings. She's a circle of light. bloom of the sun's creation. She's a sport. She's the harvest of education. She's a mother of every life born through each day and each night. And with the father she gave the earth for. She's a circle of light. Everybody sing. She's a circle of light. Bloom of the sun's creation. She's the bloom of the sun's creation. Circle of light. She's a sport of life. Harvest of every nation. She's the harvest of every nation. She's a mother of every life. Through each day and each night. With the Father she gave the earth for. She's a circle of light. 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 One of our MCs.
Thank you. Let's have a round of applause for Jack. So appreciate helping out today. Jack's been at our meetings every week. Just a reminder to the public out there and for those of you sitting at the table, every week, basically at 6 o'clock on Tuesday at the tribal chambers, we get together and we talk about what we're talking about today. We break bread together, we have a meal, we're very positive and very inclusive. So if you have comments, concerns, or what have you, please come to the meeting. Don't just always wait for your opportunity to gain or what have you. Part of being a patriot or part of wanting to participate in the future of your tribal government is to get engaged at all fronts and all opportunities. I think it's really important that if this is not the venue, hopefully we'll be creating more for more conversations. So we're going to be going this afternoon. We're going to have another speaker, and then we're going to have the tribal leaders. They're going to be coming up here and just offering their perspectives. If we have time for questions, we will do so. Please consider that your questions are not an opportunity to get your names in. You can settle a lot of things, but this is not the place and time to do it. Our council are up there 5 days a week. You can get a hold of them at 338-7521. If you've got needs for recourse or redress, please do so. That's your opportunity. That's where your governmental office is. I'd like to introduce a lady. Her name is Majel Russell. She's the head of the Elk River law firm. Majel has been instrumental in a lot of litigation and in Montana Indian country, where she worked probably for all the tribes, and she's a member of the Crow Nation. And Majo's going to talk about implementation issues. Now, it's one thing to pass a constitution. That's one thing. But to implement it, to then figure out the processes of how you administrate tribal government is a whole different thing. It's on the road and the venture does not stop when you pass a constitution. Then what do you do then? How do you start to unwind the thing in terms of the services, the accountability, etc.? So we'll turn it over to Majel.
Thank you, George. Thank all of you. I'd like to thank the organizers of this symposium for inviting me to be here, and I'm also very honored to share the stage with such renowned speakers as Mr. Cornell and Jill. So I'd like to thank all of you. I'm going to talk about the experience that we had at the Crow Tribe and our constitutional reform. And I think that it will be very instructive for you to think about how difficult it is, how the process is. Keep in the factor in mind that constitutional change doesn't fix everything overnight. It's a very lengthy process to actually change the way that a tribe governs itself. So hopefully you can take some instruction from my presentation. I wanted to also say that, you know, tribal government is what keeps us as Indian people. You know, there's a lot of racial groups, there's a lot of ethnic groups in this country, and we are distinguishable from those groups because we have tribal governments. And if we have a tribal government, the stronger that tribal government is, the stronger our sovereignty is, and that's what sets us apart from all those racial and ethnic groups and makes us a political group. And our strength as tribes is because we are political groups and we have sovereignty. But that sovereignty can only be exercised if you have a very, very strong tribal government. Tribal government needs strong rules. I think we've heard that. And we need a strong constitution to start with. So I give you that as sort of my premise. Also, just a little bit about myself. I am a member of the Crow tribe. I'm an attorney and I've been practicing law in Montana and various states for, gosh, I hate to tell you, but over 20 years. So I've been out there, I've become an old warhorse in the Indian law trenches. And I've litigated quite a number of cases, from tax cases, water law cases. I've been involved in litigation here on your reservation also. I'm also a Crow speaker. I very much believe in the traditions of our tribes. I'm very honored and humbled that I was raised by very traditional old people of Crow. And I think that all of that traditional background that you carry really gives you a good foundation and framework when you're out there trying to help our people. And for all of you, I refer to you as Agiwishpaga. That means the people outside my lodge. So all of you here at Blackfeet, I'm honored to speak to you in that regard. So I want to start out with just giving you a little bit of background on the Crow tribe. You know the Crows, they're your neighbors, and you have a lot of interactions with them. But the Crow tribe is a treaty tribe, and we are within the Fort Laramie Treaty of 1868. That's actually the third treaty that we have, but that's the treaty today that's been ratified and that we recognize. The present population of the tribe is just over 13,000 members. Our reservation land base is about 2.1 million acres. And we have 6 districts on our reservation, and they actually originate from the original irrigation system districts. So our districts are actually even influenced by the United States government, because they came on the reservation and they decided to construct irrigation systems in our districts. And then the tribe basically endorsed those districts, and we've now ratified and accepted the 6 distinct districts. The Crow tribe, unlike the Blackfeet, rejected the IRA. So in 1934, when they came to do the vote at Crow, the Crows voted and they did not accept the Indian Reorganization Act. They rejected it. However, the vote was very, very small. I believe at that time there were only about 140 people that showed up for the meeting. And so in that time, it was a very small segment of the population that actually rejected the IRA. And what the tribe did is they governed themselves based on representatives of these irrigation districts. So we have like Valley of the Chiefs, you know, the Mighty Few, we have the Arrow Creek, the Center Lodge, and they all selected men to serve as leaders, and we had a governing body of about 50 men who basically governed the tribe for a period from 1934 all the way till 1948. And then in 1948, we adopted a constitution that is really not that much different than the IRA constitution, even though we rejected the IRA. But before I get into that, I want to say that, so at Crow, back in those days, you know, while governance may have been a mystery, it may have been not very ratified or formal, the social structure of the tribe was very, very strong. And that's one thing I think that stands out about the Crow people. You know, most people my age still speak Crow, and a lot of children still speak Crow. And we have a cultural and traditional system that is very strong and intact. Our clan systems are very much intact. So I say that because I think for the cultural components of our tribe, our traditional components, they were very functional. And we continued that, and we still continue that today. But when it came to governance, as we want to think of it in the non-Indian sense, we were very bad at that. And we've had a history of being very bad at having a stable, strong government over the years, in the sense of modern day government. But for culture, we've done very well. And so I think that's interesting to look at those two issues. So our initial 1948 Constitution is just like an IRA Constitution, or was like an IRA Constitution, because it allowed the BIA a lot of oversight and involvement. Like, they had to approve all of our resolutions, they had to approve actions that the tribal council took. So that was a problem. And a really interesting feature about our original Constitution is that the agent that we had at the time at Crow was a member of the Moose Lodge, back east somewhere. And when the tribe was trying to figure out, what do we do, what kind of constitution should we adopt, he pulled out this old Moose Lodge Articles of Incorporation, this organizational document, and said, you know, I think this is just a ticket. This might just work for you people. And the Crows adopted that document. They made a few modifications, but for the most part, the Constitution originated from some Moose Lodge charter. And basically what that Constitution did is just establish how you're going to run a business meeting. So like, you know, a school board or any other sort of board that has an organizational document about how you're going to run a business meeting, that's basically what our Constitution looked like. It did have 4 officials, and what was an interesting feature about the Crow Constitution was it had a town hall form of government. And that meant that every single member of the tribe was a voting member of the council. So the tribe would meet, the council would meet 4 times a year, and that's when they would conduct business. And we had very heated meetings from when I was a very small child. You go to the council meeting, and sometimes there'd be 1,000 people there, and there'd be a lot of shouting and yelling, and it was a very chaotic way to govern the tribe. And the meetings were governed by Robert's Rules of Order. And so most Crows always understood, by the time you were about 5 years old, you understood what division of the house meant. And what that would mean is that they take a voice vote. They have a resolution, they take a voice vote, and then, you know, the yeas would shout and the nays would shout, and then somebody would shout and say, division of the house. And that meant then you had to publicly vote. So they would form a line over here, and all the people that were for the resolution would walk through, and over here they'd form another line for all the people that were opposed to the resolution. So the voting was public, so everybody saw how you voted, and that created these factions that became very, very strong and powerful, and actually pretty much limited any orderly business, any orderly transaction of business, because we had that public voting. And so if you were walking through with your mother-in-law, they would shout at you and say, hey, what are you doing voting over there? Your family's over here. You know, so it was a very difficult way to do business. But that is the way the tribe governed themselves clear until 2001 when we adopted this Constitution. So constitutional reform has been, I think, on the tip of many Crow people's tongues for many, many years. Many years people realized this Constitution was very poor and it was not workable. It limited the tribe from meaningful business opportunities. And in fact, I believe it was Secretary Watt way back who referred to the Crows as a demonstration or example of a true democracy, and how a true democracy can't work. And here's a good example for you. So over the years, we had, you know, lots of negative comments about the way the tribe governed itself. But the first real meaningful efforts started after the U.S. condemned lands for the Yellowtail Dam in 1963. And that happened because the tribe could not resolve a dispute among themselves. And I think we've heard that today as being a concern. How does a tribe resolve disputes among the tribe? And in 1963, the Crow tribe were so heated over the Yellowtail Dam that the tribe broke into 2 segments. And we had the Mountain Crow and the River Crow. and they couldn't reach agreement on the terms that the U.S. was offering to lease the Yellowtail Dam. So they basically butt heads for so long that the U.S. came in and finally just condemned the dam and took it in a constitutional taking. So unlike the Salish Kootenai, who have been very fortunate to have leased the Kerr Dam to the United States and made that revenue all those years, the Crow tribes basically couldn't take advantage of that opportunity because they had no way to resolve the dispute among the two factions in the tribe. So that started the first, I think, really meaningful review of the Constitution and attempts to reform. In the mid-'80s, we had a second go-around where a lot of people wanted to reform, and unfortunately, that came about because we were having a lot of people who were getting indicted. I think I heard that earlier from Jill, that at Crow we had the same problem. And the problem was that our Constitution provided no guidance on how to manage the tribe between those giant council meetings. So there was a lot of autonomy by the tribal officials that were elected. And what happened then is we went through a period of time where we had a lot of tribal chairmen who were indicted, we had a lot of directors who were indicted, and so that caused sort of another review of our Constitution and looking at reform. We weren't successful with that reform effort either. And so the key issue was that the tribal resolutions that were adopted at those quarterly meetings were so limited, that they didn't, you are never sure if you really had valid approval for actions if they didn't go through that quarterly meeting 4 times a year. And that caused a lot of chaos and concern. Okay, so then in 2000, we got a new chairman. We had a chairman for 10 years, the late Clara Nomi, and Clara Nomi was a very astute leader for the Crow tribe because she was able to work with that very bad, poor constitution, poor form of government we had, but maintain power for 10 years. She had to do that, though, by making sure that she had the vote of the people every quarterly meeting. So she had to make sure that she had enough favor with the tribe so that they didn't vote her out every quarterly meeting. That was the burden that every one of those tribal chairmen had under that whole constitution. So she became very adept and was good at that. But I heard from the comments that were made earlier, there was a lot of unrest in the tribe, and that's what was happening at our council meetings. Some of the last council meetings we had in the 1990s, 1998, 99, we had violence and outbreaks. We had bottles would be thrown all over. We had near riots because there was so much unrest within the tribe. And so in 2000, we got a brand new chairman, and that chairman ran on constitutional reform. That was his platform, this constitutional reform. So as soon as he took office, he put together a group of people to work on constitutional reform, and they developed some objectives of what they wanted with constitutional reform. So the first thing that the Crows were really concerned about is what they referred to as one-man rule. In other words, at that time, the chairman had all the power, and the chairman could make all the decisions, basically expend all the funds and so forth. And they ran the tribe between those big meetings. So they wanted to do away with that, and they wanted to figure out a way that we didn't have to have just one-man rule. They also wanted to create transparency, and I heard that a lot today in the different comments also. People wanted to know where the money came from, who was making decisions on the budget, and how the money was getting spent. And that was a major, concern outcry from the tribal members is where's our money? Where does it go? Who benefits from our money? Who decides what we're going to do with it? So that was number 2. The other thing is they talked about separation of powers, and we've all heard that. We've all heard we should have separation of powers. They wanted an independent court so that you could actually go to court and get a fair remedy in that court. So separation of powers was also there. 4th, they wanted a balance of power. They wanted some mechanism so that one branch of government didn't have all the power, that it would have to be shared with the other 2 branches of government. So that was another key consideration. And then a big thing was that they wanted fairness and opportunities. You know, people wanted a fair shot at jobs, at housing, at leases. You know, for a very, very long time, the tribe operated with what we all know at Crow as the spoil system. And you talked about it here a little bit. It depended on who you were related to, on what benefit you might get from the tribe. You know, if you were related, if your family was in power, then they were going to take care of that family. So the tribal members wanted to end that and said we needed a more fair system so that we could get away from the spoil system. You know, but I have to just make a couple comments about that. I think that until we have enough money, you know, on our reservations, until we have enough jobs and enough money, we're always still going to deal with some form of this spoil system. And for the chairman at Crow, you know, where we had 80% unemployment, you know, we had very limited number of HUD houses, you know, we have very few cattle producers that are trying to get leases. When the chairman would get in, he would have to remember everybody who put him in, and he would have to take care of those people in some way. That was his obligation. So that's a real hard issue to deal with. You know, how does a chairman get in and just disregard all the people that put him there until we have enough jobs, money, resources, economy, so that the chairman doesn't get boxed into that position, the chairman or the council, the leaders, so that they're not backed up against the wall in that position. So that's really key. You know, that's key, and we're still today dealing with this same problem, even though we've tried to make change. So the next objective was that we would promote economic development through an independent court. And one of the things that I also think you should think about is we made changes to our form of government and adopted this constitution to address very specific things. And at the time that we adopted this objective, or were dealing with this objective, we had a huge coal bed methane opportunity that the tribe was dealing with. And the company wanted to invest all of this money into this major coal bed methane harvest project on one side of the reservation. And they were saying, we think we can make you so much money on this coal bed methane project, but we really want you to have a court system that's independent in order for us to do business with you. And so the tribe was listening to that. And of course, the tribe is always, you know, looking for opportunity to address our poor economic situation. So that was key. That actually was, I think, a real pivotal component of deciding that we're going to have an independent court, was so that we could basically have gotten that deal at that time, at that particular time when we were addressing that. Again, another objective was that we wanted to create stable, consistent tribal government. Just like I said before, under our old form of governance, every council, the chairman faced the chance of getting impeached. Every single council. If there was a petition with 100 signatures, they could throw out the chairman. So one of our big objectives was just to stop that and see if we could keep the chairman in office for a few years. And you've probably heard about Crow. They impeached many chairmen, including my dad. So we had a lot of impeachments over years. And then we wanted to also look at a government that would be functional in the modern day. You know, things are very different than they were in 1948, of course. And we wanted a government that could be responsive to modern day business needs. So those are basically the objectives that we have. So in 2000, the chairman then appointed a constitutional reform team. And here's where I think this is instructive for you all to think about. I heard you ask questions about, should we do it piecemeal? Should we do it all in one fell swoop? And I'll tell you how we did it and the pros and cons of that. So what this team did is they drafted 6 amendments to that existing 1948 Constitution. And they put the 6 amendments together, and I'll go through those. And then the Crow membership voted on those 6 amendments in December 2000. So think about this. Our new chairman took office in July of 2000 on constitutional reform platform. They adopted or drafted these amendments by December of that year, and they put them to the people to vote by secret ballot. And those amendments passed by a huge amount. So there was a real ratification from the people that we needed to change our form of government. The people were very much ready for change, and that was reflected by that secret ballot vote on the amendments. So the amendments, what did they do? They extended our 2-year terms to 4-year terms for that executive branch. They also said that that big general council that we had shall now serve as a legislative branch of government, and that all items before that legislative branch shall be decided by secret ballot. And then they also started putting some restrictions on actions that could be taken by one branch. So all land purchases, transfers, tribal trust encumbrances, anything that involved our trust resources that involved over $1 million would have to go to all the members of the tribe for a vote by secret ballot. Okay. Then also, they established 3 distinct branches of government, and they stated that there would be a separation of powers, but they didn't discuss what those powers would be. These are the amendments. I'm talking about these amendments. And the 3 branches, of course, were the legislative, which was the general council, executive branch, and then the judicial, which would be an independent court. So those amendments got passed, and they were submitted to the Secretary of Interior, because under our old Constitution, all of the amendments to the Constitution had to be approved by the Secretary of Interior. The Secretary of Interior got back to the tribe and they said, we're going to deny approval due to the conflict between the amendments and the existing provisions of the Constitution. And they said, now what you've created is this chaos. You have these really nice amendments that are lofty and well-intentioned, but you didn't do all the work to make sure they work with what's remaining in the Constitution. So we had some contradictory, conflicting provisions. So the Secretary of Interior got back to the tribe by the end of December 2000 and said, we're not going to approve your amendments. So you need to figure out another strategy. Okay, so the tribe, though, had listened to the people, and even though the amendments, were not correctly done, or they didn't go far enough to actually implement change, the tribal administration said, we can't back away from this. The people voted, they want change, we're going to have to move ahead with it. And so they requested that the Secretary of Interior withhold the denial of the amendments for 6 months, and then allow the tribe to either revise those amendments and do more work on those amendments, or to do a completely new constitution. So the tribe is really under the gun. We had to go actually clear to Washington and meet with the Secretary of Interior and various people back there at the solicitor's office and ask them for that period of time. Because we were afraid that if they rejected those amendments, all of the tribal membership would be, there'd be such outcry that it would be impossible for that administration to stay in office. They had to move forward because the people had voted. So what the tribal administration did is they put together this constitutional reform committee, and that committee then tried to figure out how best to move forward, and what they decided is that they should repeal in its entirety the old 1948 Constitution and just start over. And so that was the direction that they took. Okay, so the committee process basically tried to determine what problems and issues existed with the tribal government. So they looked at those amendments, but they also wanted to go a little further. And I think I heard you discuss that today, Steve, is that I think when you're looking at constitutional reform, you really need to be specific about what you think needs to be fixed. What has to be fixed? What were the specific problems and issues? The amendments identified transparency, separation of powers, balance of power, budgeting. They did identify certain things, but you kind of have to be very specific about what issues do you have with your current government that need fixing. not just personalities, not just compliance with existing rules, but actually what is there that really needs to be addressed and fixed. The committee got together and they looked at lots of other tribal constitutions. We looked at constitutions from all over the country. We looked at some of the Pueblo documents for governance, and just basically looked at different government structures and so forth. But you have to remember that we were under the gun here. We had 6 months to do this. And actually, I don't know if we ever would have done this if we didn't have that 6 months. I don't know if the Crows could ever have done it if they didn't have to do it under the gun. I mean, and there were a lot of people who kept saying, oh, we need to have a con-con. We need to have 5 con-cons. We got to have a con-con in each district. And we had to come back, and the chairman had to say, we have 6 months to do this if we're going to do it. And so we are under the gun to do something. So, you know, I don't know, you've got to look back and think about that. Is that a blessing? Was that a blessing or was it not? You know, I don't know. But it really caused the tribe to have to focus on this, and they couldn't just sit around and wait for years. Okay, so we did talk about different structures, including a business council, just 2 branches of government, keeping the government that we had, but maybe revising some of the powers and so forth. The committee worked every week, and they worked about 2 days a week for about 4 months straight. And then following getting together, they did do public hearings. So each of our districts had public hearings, and they were heated, difficult public hearings, but the document did get a lot of vetting with tribal members. I know today a lot of tribal members still feel this went really fast, it was very quick, and you know, they probably felt like they needed more time to respond, but this is just the way it all shook out in that short 6-month period. So the Constitution was adopted in 2001, and like I said, those amendments were adopted in December of 2000. We got the denial of approval from the Secretary of Interior in December of 2000, right before the first of the year. A new committee was formed to keep moving on the project, and in July of 2001, there was one of our last big council meeting under our old Constitution, and I believe there were about 2,500 people that showed up for that meeting in Crow, and they basically took a vote to throw out the old Constitution and adopt a new one, and it was done. Now, that's the beauty of not being an IRA tribe, is you can do that. You can actually do that. We didn't have to deal with that secretarial election. We didn't have to deal with, you know, getting voters registered. We could just show up at our council meeting and take that action. Good and bad, you know, probably good and bad, because the tribe just decided this is what we're going to do, and people showed up and they voted, and it was a done deal. Okay, so the new Constitution had a lot of the objectives that were adopted in the amendments, and so there's a whole lot that we maintained with those amendments that I talked about. And then what's very interesting, that even though we are a non-IRA and we threw out the old Constitution, adopted the new one, we had a lot of people, our tribal membership, who was so used to the BIA blessing and endorsing everything that the tribe did, that they wouldn't recognize the Constitution, the new one, until the Bureau approved it. And they said, we want the Bureau to approve it, and we're not going to recognize it until the Bureau approves it. So what we did is we came up with a acknowledgement. So we asked the Bureau, would you just acknowledge that the Crow tribe has adopted a new Constitution? We don't want you to approve it. We're not asking for that. We just want acknowledgement. And so the Bureau of Indian Affairs agreed. Nobody local. We had to go all the way to DC to fool with all of that, but we did go back to DC. And Neil McCaleb at the time was the Assistant Secretary of Interior Indian Affairs. And he agreed, and so they finally acknowledged the Constitution in December of 2001. But I have to tell you again, I don't know if that acknowledgement would have happened if we hadn't had a hostile takeover of the tribal office. So after the Constitution was adopted, And after the implementation process started, there were a lot of people who were still objectors, and they felt like the BIA should have approved it. They felt like it went through too fast. They were concerned about, lots of various issues in the Constitution. They staged a hostile takeover of the tribal office at Crow, and they went in December of 2001, and basically were in the office for about 4 days until the Department of Interior sent out some SWAT teams and had to take the building back. And it was at that point that the officials, the tribal officials, got a hold of DC and said, we need you to acknowledge our Constitution because we have a whole segment of the population that doesn't accept it unless you acknowledge it. And if you would do that, you can, bring some peace to this whole issue. So that's when Neil McCaleb actually did acknowledge the Constitution. And again, I don't know if that would have happened right away. I don't know if that would have come timely, but we were at a point where we were near bloodshed when they actually did acknowledge the Constitution. And I don't know if many of you remember that or were aware of it, but we had a huge financial loss. We had a lot of destruction in the tribal office, of furniture and phone systems and files, and so it was really big chaos. So all of this I can get up here and talk about, and we're all thinking about it, but it was a very serious, difficult issue, and it caused huge division with families, and it was a very scary time, very difficult time for the Crows. Okay, now real quickly, not quickly probably, I don't know how much time I have, but I'm going to go over just some key provisions of the Constitution. I heard a lot of you asking about, well, how did you address certain things, certain concerns? So the Constitution establishes that all members of the tribe, all of the members of the tribe are the General Council. And we had to maintain that. Because before, all of our tribal members voted on everything. If you were a tribal member, you had a right to vote and on everything. And so we had to keep that in place somehow and acknowledge that they still had power. We couldn't disempower the people. And so, and this is a standard sort of understanding for most tribes, is that General Council is the membership. But we have that right in the Constitution. And then the General Council, which is the people, establishes 3 branches of government. Certain powers are reserved for the General Council. There's certain things that are reserved so the people still have a voice in government, that we didn't completely take away the voice of the people. It clarifies the tribe's jurisdiction. I heard somebody talking about jurisdiction. It clarifies the tribe's extension of jurisdiction over all lands within the reservation, plus lands within the original boundaries of the reservation, which was the original 38 million acres. And it provides that the tribe can adopt ordinances to determine members. So we didn't fight with enrollment issues because we simply had no time. We couldn't deal with that in that 6-month period. So what we did is we grandfathered in everybody who was a tribal member and everybody who was a quarter blood, but then we left open a provision that said further membership determinations will be made by tribal ordinance. So we left that open so that we could make those changes, which we never have in 15 years. But it's there, the power to do it is there. Okay. The executive branch of government, the tribe chose to maintain those 4 officials because they were so used to that. It was too difficult to radically change that. So we still have our chairman, vice chairman, secretary, and vice secretary. We did establish 4-year terms. All the terms, though, for that branch are, they're not staggered. So they all turn over every 4 years. And then here's the key part of, I think, the Constitution. You have to define the powers of this branch very carefully. You have to have express powers that talk about exactly what they can do and basically set limits on what each of these branches can do. And that's been a key issue. We tried to do that. We tried to include that the executive branch would have day-to-day administration of all the departments, entities, and instrumentalities of the tribe. They would administer the tribal funds. They would develop budgets and expend the budgets accordingly. They negotiate with the federal, state, and local governments. They have the power to purchase land for public service, for public purposes at fair market value after condemnation. This was a biggie. This was a hot issue for the tribe, but they did build in the power to condemn for public tribal purposes at fair market value. The duties of the executive officers were to implement laws of the tribe. The chairman had authority to appoint cabinet members, select a bonded comptroller to administer funds, appoint committees to advise the executive branch, and then the chairman may delegate authority to the vice chairman if the chairman is unavailable. But there was no automatic delegation. In other words, if the chairman happened to be traveling, the vice chairman couldn't take power. There had to be an express delegation of that power from the chairman down to the vice chairman. However, if the chairman was absent, couldn't be located, and again, you know, some of these things are in there for very specific situations that somebody had on their mind at the time, but they're saying if that chairman is absent for 5 days, there's an automatic delegation that the vice chairman can conduct business and carry on matters for the tribe. So that's in there. Okay, the legislative branch. So the Crow tribe has a very big legislature. It's an 18-man legislature, and it has 3 members from each of those 6 districts. And those legislators are elected within that district. It's not an at-large vote. The 4 officials that I talked about on the executive are at-large, but in the districts, those representatives are elected by the district. And they do have 4-year terms, but they're staggered. They meet 4 times a year, and they're only supposed to meet for 2 weeks, 4 times a year, and conduct legislative business. Today, this legislature has 18 full-time salaried members. And so that has been something that has occurred over the years after we adopted this. And the reason I bring that up is at the time that I think the legislature was considered, it was considered to be not a huge budget item. If you're going to meet, you know, 4 times a year for probably a week to 10 days at the most. And now they're all 18 full salary positions, and that's become a major part of the tribal budget. So that's another thing to think about. How expensive should tribal government be? How big should tribal government be? So that's now what's happened. The legislature has a speaker of the House, and that speaker then conducts the meetings of the legislature. Okay, let's go to legislative powers. So the legislature has the authority to adopt legislation that governs the tribe. So really what they're supposed to do is just like your legislature here in the state, is they adopt the laws. So somebody brings in, you know, a bill or a joint resolution, they have joint action resolutions, then that's what the legislature does. The legislature also can charter instrumentalities, and then here's the biggie. So I told you that the executive branch develops the budget and administers the funds. But for the budget that the executive branch develops, it has to come over here to the legislature for approval. They grant final approval. And what we thought is this would be a nice, friendly process. That, you know, the executive would have a nice budget, and they would talk about, you know, all the different programs of the tribe and what they're going to do, and get it all together in a nice narrative and bring it over to the legislature, and the legislature would say, good work, everybody, we're all working together, this is great, and we're going to approve it. No way, no way. The executive and the legislative branch have been in litigation for 6 years to figure out what this means. The legislature is saying, when you bring that budget over here, I have the power to change it. That's final approval means that I have the power to change it. The executive branch is saying, you have no power to mess with the budget. You have to either accept, either approve or disapprove what we brought in, and if you don't approve it, you send it back and we'll bring you something different. but that has not been resolved. And so these two branches have been in litigation for 6 years over exactly how budgeting works. So prior to the litigation, we did develop what we called a Financial Management Act, and we thought that that provided guidance for both sides. But both sides have a different interpretation of what that ordinance says, and so it's been in the court process. They have been in settlement discussions for the last year and a half. In the meantime, the tribe is sort of bumbling along and working together on the budget, but that issue has not been resolved. So that's one of the things, now in hindsight, wow, how did we fix that? How do we be careful about those express powers? Is the legislature, what is their role? We have to clearly define what the legislature's role is. And we've had a lot of bartering and negotiations on this budgeting issue. The one chairman will come in and say, I want this budget passed, but I've reduced all of their salaries because this legislature has gotten so big that it's a huge expenditure for the tribe. And the legislature will say, then you tell us where every dollar is going and who's all on the payroll and what they're getting paid from. And if you bring that into us, then maybe we'll approve your budget with our reduction in our budget. And the legislature will say, well, no, or the executive will say, well, no, that's fine then. I'll just give you your budget and let's move on. So this process has basically circumvented some of that good intention that we've had for transparency, for balance of power, for fairness in budgeting. We've gotten sidetracked from that. And hopefully the parties can actually reach some settlement. We have several different drafts of a new financial management ordinance. But as of today, it's still in litigation. The other thing, here's the next one. Grant final approval of all leases, dispositions, or encumbrances of tribal or trust assets. So what was going on here was the tribal officials were always accused of getting into huge financing arrangements or mortgages or huge leases of our natural resources, and the tribal membership didn't know about it. So the whole concept was, why don't we have the legislature approve these big deals? Again, this has caused a huge problem, because you may have a company that comes in and wants to do business with the Crow tribe. They might reach agreement with the executive branch, then they got to go over there to the legislature, and the legislature is probably going to say, no, we want to redo the whole deal. We don't like that deal, now we want to start over. So again, this is key in terms of looking at what each of these branches should do, can do, what's the limitation of their power. The other key issue is a waiver of sovereign immunity. Anytime you're doing business, you're going to have some limited waiver of sovereign immunity. Maybe a big waiver, maybe a small waiver. And the tribe, they did not want the chairman to get into agreements or the executive branch that would waive sovereign immunity. So they said, if you're going to enter into a contract that has any sort of impact on sovereign immunity, then the legislature has to bless it. They have to approve it. And we're in the same problem there. We have huge disputes now on when the executive branch negotiates something, whether or not the legislature will adopt it. Okay, so the legislature is supposed to conduct district meetings and in each of their districts, and that mechanism is the way that the membership remains engaged in government. So we wanted to make sure that, all the people out there had a voice. They still had a voice. They still had some mechanism to impact legislation. And that's through these district meetings. They don't happen anymore. They happened maybe once or twice in the early years, and now we don't have district meetings anymore. So, what was a good intention there became, I guess, too difficult and cumbersome. And so we just haven't followed through. And so then the people, again, are losing that voice. Unless you have this district meeting, they lose that voice and that ability to participate. The chairman also can submit legislation, and that's happened. That's the way we've generally done business, is the chairman submits bills to the legislature for adoption. Bills from the people have, they were prevalent in the first couple of years, but after that, that's all kind of fallen by the wayside, and we're not having bills from the people. Okay, now, here's another big thing that you need to think about when you have all these branches of government. You have to think about veto and veto power. And that wasn't something that we thought too long and hard about in that short 6 months. But so all legislation that the legislature adopts has to be approved by the chairman. Okay? And the chairman has to approve it in order for it to become valid and effective law. The chairman, though, has the right to veto anything passed by the legislature. So, you know, the chairman can say, no, I don't like this, it's too expensive, or this is not workable, and he can veto it. So then the legislature has the authority to override the chairman's veto with a 2/3 majority vote. So if there's a huge disagreement, say on a coal deal, or on a water deal, or any major agreement, you know, and this is the process. Now, the best part of this process is this last bullet, is then the chairman can either accept the override of his veto, or he can choose to submit that legislation to the general council to vote on by referendum. That's your dispute resolution process right there. So if the two branches of government can't agree, and there's been a veto involved, a veto override, then what the chairman can do is submit that to the people and say, okay, we're at a deadlock. Now it's up to the people, and you vote by referendum, and that's our dispute resolution process. So I still look at this and think, you know, if it were 1963 and we had a big dispute within our tribe, there was a mechanism that would have resolved that, where we didn't have to go through the condemnation of the lands for the Yellowtail. But so hopefully, we've never used this yet. In the 15 years that we've adopted the Constitution, we haven't had an issue that the chairman has sent to the people to basically test the effectiveness of this part. But that's what's there for dispute resolution. Okay, another thing that we have, which I think is imperative that you have to have, and all our constitutions have it, is we have to have removal and recall. Okay, and removal and recall are two different things. You have to have a removal provision, which is basically when one of the officials does something improper or outside the bounds of the powers or something wrong, they can be removed. And in our Constitution, the branches remove their own members. But then you also have to have a power of recall. And recall is the people. And that's where the people still have a voice to decide, you know what, we need to get rid of that guy. And there's a process to do that. So, and that still gives the people some power in that process. So we do have removal and recall, and I outline that right there. And I think we're going to make the PowerPoint available for everybody. I think people will be able to access that. Okay. All right. Okay, now I'm going to talk really quickly about the judicial branch of government that we have. Our judicial branch of government is very short. It's only that long. We didn't go into all of these various courts and what the court can do and can't do and whatever. It basically says that there will be tribal courts, and we will determine what those courts will look like in the Law and Order Code. And the reason we did that is we think that you actually are going to have varying kinds of courts. Maybe we need a peacemaker court. Maybe we don't. Maybe we need a drug court. Maybe we don't. Here's the biggie. Maybe we need a constitutional court. And we didn't have time to go through and try to figure out all the kinds of courts that might be appropriate for the people. So we basically just said we're authorized to create those courts as they become necessary by ordinance. So it's not in the Constitution. It is a separate and distinct branch of government. There are judges' qualifications, but they're in the Law and Order Code. And the election or selection of judges shall be in the Law and Order Code. So if you decide some years that electing judges is the way to go, fine. But if you change your ordinance and say, you know what, we're going to decide we're going to seat judges based on qualifications for a period of time in a different process, you can do that. So there's some freedom there. The two big things that we maintained under judicial powers is the judicial branch cannot review executive branch decisions that are made within the scope of the enumerated powers. So in other words, the executive branch has some executive privilege, and you can't go run to court and sue the executive branch or have actions reviewed if those actions are within that scope of the powers. But if they do something that's outside the scope of the powers, then the judicial branch can actually review that. So there's a review mechanism here that's limited, but it is there. We've never tested that. In the litigation between the two branches, we're looking at interpretation. So this provision hasn't been tested yet. The judicial branch also shall have authority for a limited legislature to determine if that legislation conflicts with the Constitution. So in other words, if the legislature adopts a bill that says, I don't know, keep their front porch light on for, 18 hours a day for safety or something, and you felt like that was conflicting with the Bill of Rights that you have in the Constitution or something, that's a crazy. There is a mechanism to try to keep them within the scope and also consistent with the Constitution. Okay, now we get to the Bill of Rights. We do have a Bill of Rights. One of the main objectives of the pro-Constitution was to try to make opportunities fair and available to the way to accomplish that would be to include a Bill of Rights. So there is a Bill of Rights that guarantees tribal members all have an equal right to the same benefit. Due process, meaning knows what happens in governance. You know, sometimes you'll say, well, they adopted a resolution for that, I think way back 10 years ago. And then someone will say, well, how do we find it, and what, do we have it codified, how do we get it? You know, so that's all important. So that's there. The other thing is, I do think we have a very good tribal court. Our tribal court is independent. I think that little judicial section that we put in the Constitution is actually effective. The tribal court has actually adopted a drug court. They have a good appellate structure, so that's good. So we did achieve that separation of powers in decision-making, in court decision-making. And I want to say that because I want to distinguish from finances, court finances. Because one of our big problems still today, and you're not going to solve it in this Constitution, I'm not sure we need to think about this, is when the BIA gives you a 638 contract or gives you any funding, they want one signature on the dotted line to accept that contract. And in your case today, it's Mr. Barnes' signature. And they want to hold one person liable and one person to do the audit. So even at Crow, where you have 3 branches of government, you have the court, you have the executive, and you have the legislature, all of the court's money is under the control of the tribal chairman, because the tribal chairman has to get the 638 contract and then provide it to the court. The court doesn't have independent authority to go to the BIA and get its own contract. It's still, the BIA still does business. I wish Thetis was still here, because I think that that's going to take some collaboration with the BIA to think about, if we have a separation of powers, how do our separate branches access federal money without going through the tribal chairman? Because that's the way all of our 638 contracts work right now. So that's a key thing to think about. Okay, let me see. I'm just about done. I know you're anxious here. Okay, so the criticisms that we had, there's things that we did wrong. There's things we did very wrong. But, you know, there's also things we did right. The big thing that we did, and it's caused us trouble over the years, is that the executive branch vacancy does not allow the vice chairman to succeed. So in other words, when you have those 4 officials, and for some reason the chairman is gone, maybe, you know, he resigned, or, you know, Casey got indicted, he had to be removed, or whatever, you would think that the vice chairman would just take over in a succession and we just continue with orderly government. The officials at the time would not agree to that. It was a huge battle between, at the time, the chairman and the vice chairman. So we had to accommodate their conflict and put in there that we would just have to have a new election. So that's a problem, and it's costly. That's an expensive provision, but that's in there. Secondly, those districts that I talked about, we have the 6 districts. We don't have representation by population. We have a couple districts that maybe have 50 people. Probably the Bighorn district right now has maybe 50, 75 people. But they get 3 votes. They get 3 legislative votes, 3 representatives from that district. And then you have Crow, which probably has about, you know, 3,500 people, and they only get 3 reps. So we don't have representation by population across the reservation because of those 3 reps in each district. So that's an issue. And here's another one that I should talk about just a little bit. We eliminated an off-reservation district. Now, the Crow old Constitution always had an off-reservation representative on all of our key committees. Land Committee, Executive Committee, you know, Housing Board. We always had an off-reservation rep. Generally, the off-reservation rep was elected in Billings because a lot of the Crows lived in Billings. But then as the years went by, we had people living in Bozeman, Dayton, Wyoming, Sheridan, who said, why should that election be in Billings? We should have one in all of our communities where we have Crows. And then it became such a huge problem during that 6 months. Now, if you have 6 years to come up with a solution, maybe you'll find one. But when you had 6 years where you had to figure out something, they just decided, you know what, let's not have an off-reservation vote. If people want to vote in the election, they can just come home They can participate in tribal government at home, and they just did not have an off-reservation district. There's another key thing that happened right at the time that we were doing this. Right before the NOMI administration ended, we had what we called a satellite office or a sub-office in Billings. And we had a whole bunch of tribal employees that worked in that office, me included. My office was there. And one day, one of our workers got hurt, got in a car accident in Billings. And that worker got an attorney and filed for work comp. Okay, the tribe did not have work comp. We don't buy work comp. The Crow tribe didn't. So this became a huge issue because the state of Montana said, well, this person is entitled to work comp, and you're violating state law if you have employees within our jurisdiction, the state, that are not covered by work comp. And so then we got into this huge issue, and the state was saying, if you buy work comp for these employees, you have to buy it as an employer for all your employees. And so we ended up in this big litigation with the state and with this person who got hurt, their attorney. And with all of that happening right at that time, the tribe said, you know what, we don't want to fool with this off-reservation issue anymore. We don't want to have an office. We don't want to get into this work comp debate. Let's just eliminate that in the new constitution. So that's how that came about. Again, it was situational. It was a situational decision for things that were happening right at that time. Then finally, a lot of people thought that the Constitution should address every little thing. How do you deal with this? How do you deal with that? And that was a criticism. But what we tried to answer people is that, the Constitution, in the way that we understood it, was like a skeleton. It was a very strong and stable skeleton, but you would have to fill in all of the meat through your codes, your resolutions, your policies, and they could change over the years. Because changing your Constitution is so hard that you have to have a good framework, but then you fill it in with the very specific and changing needs of the tribe. But that was a criticism. Okay, I'll wrap up shortly here. Okay, so the current conflicts, I talked to you about the litigation. But the big thing that I don't think anybody thought about was how this constitutional change took our 4 officials, our government, with 4 paid tribal officials and all our departments and so forth, and blew it up so big. We now have very big government. We have big, costly government. I think the legislature's budget is about $1.5 million. And then you've got your executive branch officials and their budget and your departments. So I don't know that people really anticipated how expensive it would be to have, such a large government. Then again, I talked about the conflicts with developing a comprehensive budget, the litigation between the branches about that. It's very cumbersome to deal with contracts, deal with waivers of sovereign immunity. That's not to say it's not possible. You could actually have a bill that says anything under 50,000 is automatically, there's ways to accommodate that. It's just that they haven't come together to meet or try to fashion some of those solutions right now. We still have a lack of transparency in tribal budgeting. There's still a complaint from the people that they want to know how the money's spent. And then I think the big thing is enforcement. So when you put this nice constitution together, if people don't follow it, how do you enforce it? What are the enforcement mechanisms? That's key, and that was one of the things, and we still struggle with that. How do we make sure that if the express powers of the executive are here, that they stay within them? Let's see, I just have a couple more things. We still don't have challenges that would help us interpret provisions. And then again, as I said, all the branches of the government remain under the financial control of the chairman, because the chairman still is, the key signatory on most of all of our federal grants. Okay, so my conclusion, it wasn't easy. It only came about after we had near bloodshed. We were under the gun. Is that good? Is it bad? I don't know. But that's how it happened. Also, the tribal members had a very hard time accepting this change. You still have people that recite the 48 Constitution because they're so ingrained, and this has been 15 years now. But you know, change for tribal members is hard. That's a very difficult thing. Again, we couldn't address all the issues, so we couldn't satisfy everybody. But I think the key thing to remember, and somebody else said this earlier, is the Constitution is just a framework, and we should, as all other governments do, is just evolve. As things change, as your needs change, as your membership changes, it needs to be an evolving process. So with that, I think I'm out of time. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. Certainly words to consider as we move ahead and we start to think about changing government. Not so easy, huh? There's a lot to think about in regards, especially to the implementation. It's one thing to develop the verbiage and get it out there and vote on it, but once the rubber hits the road, a whole different story. Our next panel is going to be the Blackfeet Tribal Business Council. I know you're all looking forward to that. For those of you out there listening, we're looking forward to that as well. We have time for 2 questions. The chief of the tribe has a question. I believe we'll have one more, and then we're going to get set up for the tribal council panel. And then our last group is going to be the role of tribal government in business. So we're almost done. I hope so far the information has been very valuable. So Earl, if you could ask your question, and we'll see if maybe I will answer.
Yes, Major. Being that the Crow tribe is not under the IRA, did that give the Department of Interior to have that denial?
Well, the old Constitution had authority right in it that the BIA would approve any amendments to the Constitution. So the tribe actually gave the BIA that power when it wasn't necessary. That's how come they denied those amendments.
So you had to accept it.
So we had to accept their rejection of the amendments only because the old Constitution authorized that.
So it doesn't jeopardize our proposed constitution should there be one.
No,
Okay.
no, the old Constitution was faulty in that it gave the authority to the BIA to actually approve any amendments. And that's how that happened.
Thank you.
Okay, we got one more question real quick. And I guess we're just gonna take one more because we're gonna get to the next panel set up. Again, I apologize that we don't have a lot of time here, but we're just trying to move along here. Who raised their hand? Mr. Carlson.
I guess the biggest thing that I heard was, a difficulty between the 2 branches, the executive and the legislative. And I see that as being a big problem also, that we might get into, power struggle. And was there wording in there with the intent of them having like a full paid job and having the full power to rule over the executive? I think that's what we need to look at.
No, I have a copy of the Constitution, the pro-Constitution, which I can read, but the legislature was only supposed to meet 4 times a year, and they were only supposed to be paid for the hours of service during those 4 quarterly sessions. But the executive branch agreed to let the legislators have full-time jobs in hopes that they would work together initially. And that just evolved into a practice that now, until somebody challenges that, is just the current ongoing practice. But the Constitution tried to narrow what the duties of each of the branches were. And if you read it, I think it looks like they have very specific duties that don't overlap, but in practice, when you get all of those people seated, they have sort of a different intention, and our experience is they're just moving ahead with how they want to conduct themselves until there's a challenge, and there hasn't been a challenge.
All right. Thank you very much. Again, get up and stretch. We're going to get our next panel set up, and it's going to be representatives from the Black Creek Tribal Business Council, and we'll start here in about 2-3 minutes. All right.
Well, when I was in the Army, they used to have an old saying, smoke them if you got them. So I hope you got done smoking and put that butt out, field dress it, and bring it back in with you.
Most of these folks won't know what field dress is.
Okay, if we could ask everybody to start kind of coming back in and sit down. In terms of the conference itself, we organized it around two kind of components. So we pretty much finished the first component of our little symposium, and that was to bring in experts and professionals from outside who had experience with change, or were educated in change, to give us some guidance about how to go forward. The second part of the conference, which we really start now, focuses on our own people and our own people's input in change. Because as we've all said, at the end of the day, this is our government. It's our documents, the draft. As we, the group, have said, it's time to take responsibility for our future. So with that, if you'd like to come on in, this is going to be the tribal leaders panel. This is just the time, just asking the council members to express their position on change, their concerns about going forward with change, what they might see as some of the important issues. Before I turn it over to Chairman Barnes, Council Member William Oldchief, who couldn't be with us this afternoon, asked me to read a statement to you all, and I will do that for him. And then I'm going to turn it over to Chairman Barnes, Secretary Runnywolf, and gee, they're long-winded, so if they haven't taken any time, I'll finish off the end. So this is a statement from Mr. Oldchief, Blackfeet Tribal Council member from the Seville District. Dear Blackfeet Coalition for Changing Tribal Government and Symposium guests, first and foremost, I apologize for not being able to attend this two-day event exploring the possible changes within the Blackfeet Constitution. As HES Chairman and with the approval of the Tribal Council, the Manpower Program recently united with the Tribal HES umbrella for accountability, support, and partnership to provide a higher quality of service to the Blackfeet Nation. With this in mind, it was strongly recommended that I, Mr. Oldchief, attend a special meeting for state officials and the Manpower Deputy Director that affects their annual budgets and programs. In the past, there was no tribal leader involvement. However, with the recent merger, it became apparent that tribal leadership representation was appropriate and adds an elected official's voice who speaks in conjunction with the Deputy Director for the Blackfeet Nation. The recent division of the tribal government revealed that our current constitution was in dire need of review. Much of what was adopted and approved on December 13, 1935 fell through the cracks as each individual interpreted the Constitution to their own liking and benefit. For some time, the Blackfeet people have urged the leaders to address those shortcomings and to seed solutions that would provide a bright and secure future for all the Blackfeet. I have shared with my fellow council members that this is a time of change. Recently, I had the privilege to talk with Chairman Darren Old Coyote of the Crow Nation. It is his desire to visit the Blackfeet in the near future, along with his legislative members, and share with the Tribal Council how the new Crow Nation Constitution is serving the Crow people. Thank you and enjoy your symposium. William Bill Oldchief, Blackfeet Tribal Council member from the Seville District. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Chairman Harry Barnes, who's been an advocate for change, spoke very highly at the services of the late Mr. Jarvis. So with that, Chairman Harry Barnes.
Thank you, Joe, and thank you all for being here, actually for staying here. I heard from somebody a long time ago that the mind can't absorb more than the ass can tolerate. So you've been sitting here very patient, so thank you all for being here. I'm going to ask Dr. Carnell if you would operate my slideshow. And I remembered I didn't have them, so thank you. Anyway, you know, after 1.5 years in office, I come to realize I know it all. I've got all the answers. I kind of like that one man that you brought up, Nagel. Where did Nagel go? Oh, thank you. That's a good idea. I hadn't thought of that one. You know, but I will. You know, Nagel, I speak just a little bit of Crow too. The Crow word for council member is defendant. You know, after 160 years of treaty, I was trying to look back and see what do we have left? What haven't they stolen? They've stolen the land. They've stolen our culture. They've stolen our language. They've stolen our resources. So what do we really have left? Huh? We got this stinking Irish Constitution, huh? The Indian Reorganization Act of 1934 was touted as the Indian New Deal. I submit to you that it's probably the Indian Raw Deal, because we didn't get very much out of it, nor are we moving very fast forward with it. And so we do have to look at some changes. We have to recapture our traditional way. It's not dead, it's still there, but we need to recapture that because we have known for thousands of years that that was the right way. Everything that was spoken about was the Constitution. We did have that in place. Just for sheer survival, you'll learn how to get along. And so we did for thousands of years, and we have lost that. Once we accepted the lessons, as I said before, of colonization, then we have gone downhill ever since. We were the Buffalo people. Right? I like to speak on that because it's become one of my passions. Our life depended and was around that. Once it got out of our lives, we then started accepting this newfound reality, which in fact was counter to everything we did before. The Indian Self-Determination Act was also, that followed the Indian Reorganization Act. Two major acts, parts of legislation, that was supposed to give us the right to self-determination. It created that government-to-government relationship, and that's a very key term, government-to-government relationship. As Major pointed out, I wish he had my signature makes me also rival, but that's part of what they called social intercourse with the savages, that government-to-government relation. You know who was in charge, of course, prior to the Indian Reorganization Act, It was the Indian agent. That was the law of the land, As ignorant savages, we couldn't do anything, even travel off the reservation, without the permission of the Indian agent. That was the one man, one rule that we were under for so many years. We then learned from that when we have sovereignty. We have, and I like Joe has two different definitions of sovereignty. There's the emotional sovereignty. We're sovereign, let's kick them all out of here. There's the real sovereignty. I like to say how you get out of sovereignty or become sovereign is when you no longer have to go to the man with your hat in your hand. Then you're sovereign. Look at the big big casino tribes that got more money than they know what to do with. They're sovereign because they really don't care what the federal government does as long as they don't touch that Indian Gaming Act. That's really, folks, our future is not in Indian gaming. We've looked at the results of our casino. We're flat. We're really recycling our own money. We're not bringing in outside money, so we're not next to Boston. We're not next to New York City, and as such, we're not going to be realizing those real revenues. So let's not think our future is in Indian gaming because it's not. Our operation already, while it's paid it off, it hasn't really generated. Although we have now entered into a record with a casino. Today we see recovery, okay? We traveled through a very big storm here lately, folks, and we were all that were living here were firsthand witnesses of what a terrible storm it was. I like to tell people that we broke or shattered or nearly broke every relationship we were in. The worst one was amongst ourselves. And so we're in recovery. I like to think we're heading in the right direction, folks. Have we cured everything? Have we fixed everything? Have we solved all the problems? No, we haven't. But I think we are moving in the right direction. I'm proud of this council, what we've been able to accomplish. We still have a rough road ahead of us, but we're moving in the right direction. Somebody raised some questions about financial reporting. We have published our last 2 budgets in the local paper. If you want to know where our money is going at, look at those budgets, okay? That gives you a roadmap, okay? Every meeting we've been, I have announced and asked the treasurer, and they're all available. Every report, financial report we have is available to you as a member. You got to come down and get it. It's available at finance, but we've also made them available out on the front desk. That's because we are doing what we believe to be the fiscally responsible thing. We're trying to create a atmosphere of transparency. We're working on it, folks, we really are. Do you have every dime, nickel, and penny? No, we don't yet, but it's there, it's going there. This council has been very diligent in saying, this is the tribal members' information. We are as close today to having all of our audits caught up. It may have already been posted. I didn't talk to the treasurer before I come down this morning. But our last audit for 2014 should have been posted today. That will put us as close as we have been since Eloise Cavell was the treasurer. Okay? Thank you. Thank you. I think it is important. It's an obligation that we as elected leaders have to the members. We need to get our fiscal house in order. We're doing it. We're working on it. We try more and more each month to be more clear, more transparent. And so we're doing that. Any one of you can find the audit. You can get it right online if you got a computer. You can come down and look at it. They're always very voluminous, so we would prefer to save some trees. And you can go to the Federal Audit Clearinghouse, do a search for Blackfeet, bang, it'll be there. You can go through all. Now you can look at all the numbers. It gets a little boring and hard to figure out sometimes, but what I always do with audits, I go to the notes to the audits, because that's what the auditors find enough to note it. So there's more information in those notes than the actual numbers. We're about a $14 million a year operation, close to 50 if you talk all the 638 contracts, You know, but so the tribal operation is around $14 million. The budgeting process isn't really too overly secretive. We ask the departments, each director, give us what you need to operate in the next year. Don't just take your last one and put 10% on it and submit it, although that still happens. We want you to do a legitimate job of developing your own budget. And somebody said, well, we always run over the budgets 100%, 200%, and then you come to the council and get a new one. That doesn't happen anymore, folks. You can ask a couple of departments that faced layoffs last year when they got down to the end of the year, and they said, well, it's time to go to the council and say, we ran out of money, we need another $20,000 to get to the end of this budget cycle, because we say no, and all of a sudden there were some layoffs. Now, we took the brunt, we took the heat for it. Well, the council's laying you off. We expect our directors to develop their budgets and then operate within the budget they're awarded. Okay, now, we had $18 million in budget requests, we only have $14 million in revenue projections, so somebody gets cut, but you still have to operate within that budget. Because we don't got no more money, folks, that's it. And so we want to try to do what we believe to be fiscally responsible for the members' money. And that's somebody said, oh, it's the members' money. You're absolutely right. But we have to manage it. We have to, and we hope to manage it as responsibly as possible. We will always disagree on, do these guys need more money? It's a, let's face it, folks, it's a set of priorities. What's our priorities, you know, and so we've all tried to, and we disagree. We do. Disagreement's fine. There's no problem with disagreement, because if others disagree with me and I lose, that means I didn't do my job of convincing them that my arguments were solid, huh? And so that's what it's about, folks, is presenting information and facts that substantiate what you believe. So disagreements help me to better understand and justify my position or convince me to change it. And that's what we've got to do, folks. I'm very proud, like I said, this council has been very good. They've done a lot of good work, a lot of hard work. Earlier, I thanked all of the former council members that's on there because they've been in those seats. They know what it's like. They know it's not easy. It's difficult. Just like somebody said, you're trying to reform the government. In the meantime, while the garbage truck broke down and they're not emptying the garbage bag. Okay, the sewer is backed up in Parkview. What are you going to do about that, Harry? You know, so we're inundated every day with a whole myriad of problems because it's always been let the council fix it. Folks, I submit to you that the council cannot fix everything and should not. The council should be looking at this all from a 20,000 foot level. We cannot hold directors accountable if we then turn around and undercut them. Directors, I love you, appreciate your job, very proud of all of you, what you do, but you know, your employees and you yourselves like to shop council members. You're looking for the one that says yes. That's what the first evening agent was looking for appointment to the council, is if you go like that, you get on the council, if you go like that, damn, huh? And so we shop council members looking for one that'll say yes. Right now, folks, I have separation of powers because I refuse to get involved in the operation of the place. Refuse. I say no. I've had my own family in my office saying, this is what they're doing to us, Terry. And this is your family too. And I have to say no. Child custody battles, automatically I get way out of those because that's not my business. And if you've given up your privacy, great, well, what about the other person? They haven't. And so I don't even want to talk about family custody things. It's not my place. I'm on the council, but that don't make me a child protective service representative. I also say no when an employee comes in and says, my director did this, this, and this. Would you go beat him up? No. I'm not going to. You go talk to him and you guys talk it out and settle it. We have a grievance procedure. Go file a grievance if they are in fact violating your rights. It's not my place to run the day-to-day nuts and bolts of department operation. It's not my place. I believe, in my opinion, that we as council members do need to hold directors' feet to the fire. I just asked for a report on the first quarter budgets. Where's everybody at? Because part of our spelled out duties is to oversee the budget and make sure departments stay within budget. So I want to know who's out of budget after the first quarter. Let's go sit down and talk about how can we help you. Short of giving you more money. That was what was told. Well, we wouldn't be over budget to give all enough money there. Well, we don't have enough money. We have finite resources in infinite need. Huh? And so how do we operate within that reality? Because that is what we have to deal with. And so we need to correct it. We need to spell out duties, responsibilities. Huh? We really do. I need to know what's my duties, what's my responsibilities. I try not to overstep my bounds and go off on a tangent doing things that I try to adhere to the Constitution and bylaws and operations. That's what I have to go on, and that's what I try to do. We are, as I said, moving in the right direction. We haven't solved everything. We still have a whole lot of problems. You know, the beauty of the last council, they didn't, they spent forward. You know, so we're trying to operate within a financial constraints. And how do we then still make economic development happen? How do we increase services and help our members more and more? It's very difficult. It's extremely difficult, and I think we are. So reform is important, but you've also heard speakers say that's not the solve all. You'll still have problems, you'll still have disputes. And so you just have to do the best you can. I like one thing Chief Oldperson always says, is every council member has done the best they could. I believe that very strongly. It's a very tough job, folks, very tough job. And I am not trying to get any excuses. I knew coming in we had problems. Huh? The good news about getting audits done is you get in compliance with federal government. The bad news is you find out just how bad hole you're in. And so we're trying to work our way out of that. We're trying to manage the money the best we can. We can't change this form of government without you. We need you. I don't know how many times I've been told, oh, we heard you went back and sold the water. I haven't sold the water. Willie Sharp before me didn't sell the water, and Chief Oldperson hadn't sold the water. We are charged with bringing back the deal to the Blackfeet people to vote on. You will have that vote, not me. I can't do it. The council in full session, full form, can't do it. That's the people's vote. This constitution reform is your vote. It's your opportunity. You have to get engaged. You have to get engaged. It's easy to sit back and throw rocks. It's harder to get your hands dirty and get in there and do the work. And so all I ask is that we all respect each other and try to bring a better government that we can use, that serves us, that we don't serve. And so I look forward to all of the valuable input for the committee, for the symposium. I thank you all for your attention. I know it's tough. It is hard work reforming it. But you know what? We're the people that can do it. Thank you.
These next two gentlemen are no strangers to reform. Those of you who were part of the last reform effort spent time working with them, and Mr. Tyson Runningwood, our tribal secretary, and newly appointed council member, Roland Kennedy. So we'll ask Tyson to come up and say a few words.
Good afternoon. I'd like to thank everybody for coming. See some familiar faces from the last symposium that we had. Excuse me, I kind of have a cold. I was out there ice fishing that this Saturday, and I got a little cold during the, like I said, I want to thank everybody for coming. I never got to be on the committee last time, but my mother was on there when she was appointed by the last council back in 2008, when Fish put that on the referendum vote for the people. And I want to tell everybody about something that me and Fish talked about. And it's kind of in private, but it's basically in the sense that he said, Tyson, you know, I put that in there for separation of powers. He said, if I could, I would go back and I would change that to say that we would rewrite the Constitution. He said, because I didn't know. He said, I was very fresh, very new. First trying to learn my job, second trying to push a whole new form of government, but I just didn't know how. The only thing I knew was to say separation of powers. So when I campaigned for council, I had 5 things that I was trying to accomplish in this board. 1 term I'm going to be in. You guys heard it here. I'm a 1-termer. Got 4 years to do it in, but I have 5 things that I'm working on. Water compact, and getting it back to the people to vote on. If it fails, it fails. It's not that I'm pushing forward, make it happen or not, but that it will come back to the people and they'll make the decision on the water compact. Second thing that was there was for the Constitution. And that by my term, that we'd at least have some sort of framework done and be in place for the people to vote on, or the council to move forward with the opinion of the people to go forward. The third thing that I shot for that we could make happen was the cancellation of the Badger 2 medicine. from oil and gas development. And these are big, big issues. They're not trying to get housing straightened out. They're not trying to go back and make sure that manpower is doing their job. No, it's the 20-foot level stuff that's been looming out there around us for 30, 40 years. I've had my great-great-grandfather, Ronnie Conley, that was working on this stuff long, long time ago. And my Uncle Charlie, your dad, Gooch, Uncle, they all served up here on these same issues. And I might, in my term, that's sitting here, see these things happen. Another thing that sits out there is to make sure that we follow through with some of our losses for the Red Eagle fire and to be in the forefront of making sure that we are compensated for the losses that happen there. Last thing, the fifth, is to keep unity amongst our council. Some people, you're gonna learn, if you get on council, you're gonna lose more than you win. That's definitely true. But you gotta take it and keep going forward. And hopefully, the next council that comes in will have a new framework of a constitution to work with. And that's my greatest hope, that these people that are taking their time out every Tuesday at 6 o'clock for the benefit of the whole nation of 17,432 members will at least come out of there with something in my term. I support it 100%, whatever they come out with. If I don't go, that's my fault, but I'll support whatever they come back with. And the people that have different thinkings because they're feeling like they're being left out, well, it's just like me not going. But well, you're gonna live with it or you're not, or you're gonna take part or you're not. That's your decision. Like I told Roland Kennerly, he says, well, what's my role now that I'm a councilman and I'm a part of this water group, or not water group, constitution group? I said, it's exactly the same. Nothing changes. I said, you still support how you felt when you walk in there. The only difference now that changes is any closed door that's happening, that includes the council. You have the invited pass now to go in there and you're sitting at the table to make the decision on the benefit of the Blackfeet people. That's what I said, that's not, Roland. I'm trying to work on that. Another thing that I was just talking to Mr. Cornell, Dr. Cornell, Stephen Cornell about was, I said, it's really difficult because you have to have integrity. No matter the greatest document, we've always lived by the book, one book or another, the Bible, the Quran, the Constitution, all of these different books. I said, but the first thing is you have to have integrity as a person, as a leader. You have to have that integrity to follow the rules. There's many times I felt like I could deviate, and we could have, but I understood that I don't have no power as individually, but as a council, we have the power. We came into a mess when we came in, but it wasn't unfixable. Nothing is unfixable. As long as we're living, breathing, and wake up every day, we can keep going in a good direction. The thing that stuck out to me the most is I said, I know that we're not going to solve everything. We're not going to even try to solve everything, but we're going to work on some things together. And the foundation of getting back to a new form of government is to get to zero. And we're working our hardest to get to zero. And if you don't understand what that means financially and operationally, we need to get back to zero. We need to fill all of our director positions, and we need to make sure that our audits are caught up and that everybody is accountable and that we're transparent to the people that need to know this information. So as I said with the Constitution, I give a big applause to the framers, especially Joe, because he stepped up and took the bull by the horns and is a great leader because he has the knowledge and the ability and the desire to make a change for the people. And it reflects on the rest of us. So thank you.
Of course, as we've all said, the next gentleman's been at this for a while. He just joined us in terms of the council, but he's no newcomer to the change effort. And, like me, I've been at it a long time on a personal level Roland took it upon himself and got involved. He not only got involved, but he makes a point to communicate with others, and that's why I think he was a good choice to fill out the remaining term. Mr. Roland Kennedy.
Thank you, Joe. I'd just like to thank the tribal members. I hope I can serve you well. I'd like to thank the tribal council for giving me an opportunity. I didn't get elected, but they appointed me. It's a short term, but I've always been an advocate for for constitutional change. I was misinformed and I didn't know the Constitution very well back in 2007. So when they start having these meetings down there in 2008, I made it a point to get down there for the 32 sessions that they had at the BCC college conference rooms. And so I got educated. I think my kids kind of got mad at me. Dad, why are we going to BCC again, night after night after night? I said, well, I like to learn our way of government. And I have studied it ever since. And I've been a big advocate of it. And I wrote a lot of letters in the paper. One of my, I guess he's the elder now, but Fish Jarvis is that. He'd always come to me and say, Roland, why can't you put some things in the paper? I said, Bob, you can only write so much about the Constitution. It's kind of lame sometimes. But he kept pushing me. But you know what? I'd like to see this go through. I've been part of this committee. Things happen so fast for me. Last year, we've been meeting every Tuesday at 6 to 8 at the tribal chambers. And we got to this point, we finally got this symposium put on for all the Blackfeet members to educate themselves, be a part of it. And I'd like to encourage each and every one of you to come and voice your opinion on Tuesdays at 6 to 8 at the tribal chambers. That's where we have our meetings. And come and get involved. We're going to start the writing process of this. And we need your information. We want to hear from everybody. And so that way, when we do take and rewrite the document, and we would go forward with this, and then hopefully it'll benefit. You'll get your point across. I mean, these get heard, because like they said, if you don't come and get involved, and you sit there later and say, well, this should be this way, this should be this way, you know, come get involved. And that way nobody can come and say that you wasn't heard. And maybe your ideas are what we need. And we do need all these ideas from each and every one of you. And when I was, like I said, things were changing fast for me. Just the other day as a bus driver. And so I kind of admiring the council here. And I guess I can take credit. At 2 days I updated the, what do you call them? We updated the
Website?
I forgot our budget. On 2 days, I guess I was part of that. So, but anyway, I encourage you to come and be part of this. Let's get this rewritten. And thank you. And people that know me, I'm smart. You know.
Well, once again, I just want to thank you all for being here. Honestly, when we left here yesterday afternoon, after setting the room up, I walked outside and I thought, oh geez, we're going to come in tomorrow and there's going to be 5 people sitting at one table and we're going to be talking to each other. So I really want to thank you all for coming out and showing your interest in our government. I think what the goal of the group is to create a document that provides a framework for a healthy government with a separation of powers and a strong and independent judicial system, which in turn allows for the creation of an environment in our community for economic growth and success. The next panel will talk about the tribe's role in business. But as Dr. Cornell said earlier, the tribe can't be everything. at some point, we have to encourage and facilitate individual business. So as we go forward, one of the things we're doing is not just looking at the government, but looking at how our businesses fit into that government. I am one of those folks that after my many years of looking at our Constitution, have come to the conclusion that simply doing amendments won't work. That it's time to do a complete overhaul of the document and to draft a new form of government. In terms of the process going forward, the group will move from here to writing. For those of you that have asked, we haven't written a word yet. We reviewed the 74 document and the 2010 document, or the concepts and ideas that they represent. But one of the things that we commented about both of those documents was that, we've got so ingrained in that government mentality that we even wanted to do a cut and paste of our own Constitution, Take that old language and bring it forward. And one of the things we've said to ourselves, and look around the room at yourself, look at your neighbor and your friend, we can write our own words. We can come up with our own language. And so that's what we intend to do. We'll bring some of those concepts forward, but we'll put them in our words, in our language. As we do that, we'll get constant feedback from you, so you can tell us what you think and your ideas. We will reach a point where we will present the document to the Tribal Council for them to review and approve, to transmit to the Bureau of Indian Affairs for a secretarial election. Because we are an IRA tribe, unfortunately, so we do have to go through the secretarial election process. As you heard me indicate earlier today, what that means is that there'll be a letter sent out. Register. Everyone that gets a letter, register. Send it back. Register to vote, to take part. Because if you don't register, you won't get a ballot. You get your ballot, you fill it out, and send it in. Now, we're different again from Crow, so all the off-reservation members will get to vote in the secretarial election, which is why we're doing what we're doing today is so important. With Gail here and helping to stream the radio, this is streaming live out over the internet. Misty is streaming live out over the internet, so that our people outside here can know what's going on here today, and in that way participate with us. So that's the process going forward. We've all talked about the document. The document, our government has worked only because the people in it made it work. But simply continuing to change faces without changing the system is not going to result in long-term better change for our people. It's time to change the system. It's time for a new form of government. It's time to give all those young folks that were here earlier today a shot at a better future and a better opportunity to grow our reservation and to be able to care for their children and their grandchildren. And as has been said, I'm going to say it again, every one of our meetings have been open. Nobody has been excluded from these meetings. If your voice hasn't been heard, it's only because you haven't let it be heard. We only ask, as we do with each other, that we treat us and we treat each other with respect. We haven't agreed on everything. We have our own heated discussions, but we also share a meal. We share that meal and we talk and we shake hands and we say, I'll see you back here next Tuesday night and we'll do it again. So we're moving forward, folks. It's time to move forward. So I ran, I talked about what they ran on. I ran on two things: constitutional change and accountability. To me, they go hand in hand. When we bring that change, we will bring accountability. I do want to speak on one last topic because I think it's the issue going forward. And that's that one about money and budget. The biggest issue when we're done is going to be how to divide the tribe's limited resources. We have a $12 million budget today. $2 million of that comes from indirect cost funds from all the federal grants and programs that we run. 10 million of it comes from tribal revenue, the tribal revenue. Now, in 1974 and again in 1980, the groups there drafted 2 separate articles on education and land and resources. In both of those articles, they would require that as much as 30% of the tribe's annual revenue be immediately set aside for those purposes. Now, if that's a decision, that's the people's decision, but it's a decision if we make, we need to realize immediately results in the loss of jobs and other programs that are currently being funded. Because as Harry explained, there's no excess money. We have this little pot of money, and all of these programs are already funded. There's no new programs. It's just a matter of handing a little bit of resources out to everybody that's already there. In a new government with new priorities, all of that could change. So that's one of the things in my own mind that we have to continually think through as we move forward. How are we going to fund this new government? And what impact will that have on the services and activities that we deliver to the people today? So with that, again, this is about taking responsibility for our future, and that's what we intend to do. And I'm going to close with allowing Chief Oldperson to give his comments to us all. He's been at this longer than all of us. He's worked through people that tried to make the system work. He saw it at its worst. And I think he today realizes that it's time that we look at something new. So once again, thank you all for being here today, and a welcome for Chief Earl Oldperson.
I don't want to take too much time. I declined to say something. 1944, I was a small boy. My father drove in from our family ranch to Knockey Gymnasium. That's when this Constitution came up before the people. You either threw it out or start your amendments. But those leaders at that time, they decided that they would try, according to those elders. They would do some amendments, things that they saw that were not working. At least they assumed that they were not working, to try to fix them. And that's how this process of our being IRA tribe. Those elders that I interpreted for, they said it was a snowy day. One in particular that talked about it was from Star School. He said the meeting was supposed to be held in the old Ron Hall, Rockville. But it was a snowy day and we couldn't get to the pole. But in spite of that, there were some that were not for the Constitution, for the IRA Constitution. They said, but it still went through. They tried to dispute the results, but it still went through. When I became council member in 1954, those same elders, I was still talking for them. They saw that there were things. It's called, our elders called it wheel law. because it was Burton K. Willard and the other Senator Howard. They're the ones that put together the RMA. And so in short, they just called it the Huyo. And it was well known. Those elders done their best to be part of whatever was taking place. I remember one time we had 7 amendments. I believe that was in the late 50s or early 60s. Because we had 7 amendments, nobody voted on it. That's why it's very difficult. And I guess the only other way that we can do and try is to try the overall Constitution. And that's what we're doing today. You know, back in 1954, when I got on the council, we talked about money. What we operated under was 500,000. Now they're talking about 14 million. But still we operated. Today we have a lot of resources, people. Today we have very all intelligent people sitting around here. A lot of BA degrees, master degrees, maybe doctorate degrees. I have a doctorate, but I'm not the kind of doctorate that you would assume. And so today, I urge you folks, what you hear right here, do what you can to be part of this. Let's do what we can to say, I was one of those that caused this change. I know it's hard. You know, sometimes we talk like everybody's for something that's going to cause problems for the black people. I have a sister out there that's older than me, 87 years old. I'm not about ready to do something to her that's going to hurt her, but yet people talk like you're selling a cell. I'm not going to sell my sister out. You folks want to think. We have family members. We have children that's hoping that there will be something come out of this gathering we are having. And again, I say, you have a very important part. Just by attending this meeting. Let's stand and let's sing. We go back to our old people. These are the songs that they used. You don't hear them anymore. But as long as I'm living, I'm going to keep singing these songs. So those that want to follow, learn these songs. Be part of it. And you will help carry our tradition on. So we're going to sing this song when all the people come together from the encampment. This is when they come together, and they are together when they set up that home. My father was part of it, that's why I sing this song. My father was a great partaker of those things. So let us sing. Instead of a prayer, this is our Thank you.
Let's thank Chief Oldperson. We have one more panel this afternoon, so we're gonna move right on. We need to get something to drink, do it quick. We're gonna ask the business people to come on up. Daryl, you wanna come up and take over this one?
Just quickly, while you're getting yourselves some refreshments, tomorrow is going to be filled with tribal panels. Again, Joe said it's perspectives from the local people. We're going to have a private local business panel with Tom McKay, Robert Burns, Representative of Chamber of Commerce, Sam Lane. We have a tribal elders panel. The chief will be involved, Gertie Heavy Runner, Evelyn Bird Rattler, Leonard Garfield. Finally, we'll have the youth panel, Kai Show, John Davis, Trey Curley, and a representative student from Blackley Community College. In the afternoon, we're going to get to the Land and Resources panel. That's going to be Land Department, Terry Patsy from Blackley Community College, Gerald Wagner from the Environmental Department, John Murray, Tribal Historic Preservation Program, and Irving Carlson from the Tribal Bison Program. And then we're going to have the tribal directors, Tyson Bird Rattler, the Treasure Oak Tribe, Harry Evans, the Senior Citizens, Chauncey Gibson, Blackfeet Housing, Dave Gordon, Chief Judge of the Blackfeet Tribal Court, the Nathan Sangador Blackfeet Good Attorney, and the last panel being Robin Fairchild, James McNeely, Harold Festival, and Jennifer Wagner on the educational panel. Turn this over to Daryl. And quickly, on your packets, if you're coming back tomorrow, because I know you need to be, please bring your packets back. I'm proud to announce we made 200 packets. We didn't think we were going to distribute them all, but my goodness, so we found this day, we've had over 200 people registered. Some choose not to register, but that's okay. We understand why, but anyway, we passed out 200 packets. If you come back tomorrow, please bring your packets with you.
I'd like to call the panelists to the next session. Up here at the table, please. Danny Gilbert, Joe Bremner, Joe Gladstone. Okay. Our next panel is a group of people here that make up part of the private sector in our community. As we know, private business is one of the most important parts of the economic development and stability in our community. To this point so far, there has not much been done along with that, but we have a lot of ideas, a lot of people who have ideas that can bring forward to us a way of bringing together tribal government and private business. As we know, government is not business, government is government, and business is business. So we need strong economic leaders in the private sector. So today, We're gonna have 3 people here that are going to be talking on this subject. And I will introduce first, Dr. Joe Gladstone, Joe Bremner from Said Corporation, and Patty Gilbert from the Native American Community Development Corporation, that all have to do with something to building our private sector. So I will be asking them simply 2 questions today, and would like them to respond to this. We have about 10 minutes for each person. So I'd like to start first of all on my left here with Patty Gilbert. And the questions are, first of all, how does tribal government affect you? And secondly, what changes in tribal government would you like to see? So with that, Patty, go ahead.
Hello? Hello? Well, as Daryl said, my name is Patty Gilbert. I work for ADCBC Financial Services. We're a nonprofit agency that helps people repair their credit. We also have a loan program that we help people on a reservation. To back up a little bit, I worked at the bank for several years, and then I was to come to work for her we were going to start a loan program there. And so I wrote policies and procedures and the loan policies and things to get that off the ground. And what we did is we went out and we got some money. We borrowed money to loan to you for business development and credit repair. For economic development, that we've loaned money to them to develop their businesses. A couple of them were brand new businesses that we got off the ground, and a couple of the businesses were not really doing too much, and we were able to get them into full production. What we do is we help you write your business plan, because when you go to a bank, the first thing that they're going to ask you is, do you have a business plan? So we sit down with you, we talk to you about what you have in mind, and we help you write your business plan. And then you may need some training and accounting. We'll help you with that. Maybe you need some assistance with, we'll help you with that. So whatever you need as a business, we as a nonprofit agency will help you to get you into that, so that we can have economic development on the reservation. So we can have some of the money that gets spent here and will move around and stay here in our community too, so that we can be a larger community. And we have an entrepreneur program that works on the educational side, financial management, and then we have a micro business loan, $10,000 that we help you to get started with, and then we have a small business loan, $50,000. But if you needed more than that, what we would do would be partner with somebody else, another economic development corporation to meet your needs. So to build a building, so sometimes they might be able to go and get released to the tribe and put a small building on there and lease the land, because the businesses are just so limited here, sites. So I think the tribe are doing that part. And for future parts of the tribal government that I think would be good is, in the past they used to have a program that helped kind of like what we're doing. They injected funds into a new business, and then they would help the business get started. And then we could do the other part, help with the financial part of the financial literacy, the credit thing, the educational part. And so we're really thankful for all that the tribe does in our community, because we have so many people in our community that have talent, that are entrepreneurs, and they just need people to get them started. if you were walking a bank, like I said, they'll ask you for a business plan, but also banks do not like to do startup businesses, and they do not like to do small businesses. And we can get your business off to go. So if you have an idea or you have that talent, that we have people that do vegan, you could come in and see us, we'll help you with that. We have credit management loans, help people repair their credit. And then we also recently, just in the last couple of years, worked with Daryl and a couple other people, the Ovista Foundation, and we have artist loans. And so we can help the artists develop a business plan. And the biggest thing that they do as artists is don't think of themselves as a business. And so we help them with their pricing, how to market their artwork and their business plans, and we get them in the mode of really helping them to understand that they are a business and that they can be successful. And so we're there for them too. We're located downtown. If you're familiar with the old Film Board building, that's where our office is. If you're not familiar with the Philip Roy building, you might be familiar with the old State Montana liquor store. We're just above that area. And so our doors are open all the time. I'm there every day. And so if you have an idea and you want to be a business person, you want to start your business, no matter what your idea is, come in and see me, we'll get you taken care of. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kathy. Our next speaker will be Joe Bremner, representing Said Corporation. Joe has his own businesses, has been involved with forming businesses and teaching people how to have businesses, how to manage those businesses. And I know Joe knows very well the importance of private sector and how our tribal government is also developing that. Joe?
Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks a lot for being here, for asking me to be here to talk. I did come from the private sector business owner. I've owned 3 businesses since I moved back to Browning in early 1990s. And I came back for a reason, and that was to see what I could give back to the tribe here in terms of creating some services and businesses around town here. Currently, I am the project manager for the Said Corporation. I have been for a couple of years. And I guess my topic here today would be to talk about the Said Corporation. The Said Corporation came out of the planning department of the tribe. It was an idea that they had back in 1999. And it came through some of the key people that were there to develop the corporation was Ray Montoya and Parsons, Marilyn Parsons, excuse me. And they wrote the original business plan. And the Said Corporation is chartered under a federal charter. It's called a Section 17. And it was actually modeled after a Harvard study. They wanted to find out how successful tribes were able to manage their enterprises successfully. And they found that it was a tribe, the government arm from the business arm. And that's what the Said Corporation stands for today. Right now, the Said Corporation manages 6 business enterprises for the tribe. The Glacier Peaks Casino over here, Heritage Center, the Starlink Cable, Open Communication, Glacier Family Foods, and also the Little Peaks Casino. It employs over 250 employees and has a combined payroll of over $5 million a year. So that's money that's put up back into the economy. And I know there's a lot of misconception about the corporation. It stems from probably mostly the bingo, what's happening with that. And I'd be glad to say that, it's tough to try to get into business. It's really tough. It's hard to get loans. Site Corporation took over gaming. And we got back in compliance to where it was actually profiting the tribe. We would give quarterly checks to the tribe and upwards of 50, 60. I think at one time our biggest payout to the tribe on a quarterly basis was about $90,000. And we managed it for a couple of years, got it turned around, and then the customers, the people wanted a new casino. And that became a big challenge. Because in order for us, for the tribe to build a casino of that capacity, we had to come up with 20% equity. And so if we were looking at a $5 million loan, that meant that the tribe had to come up with $1 million to put into their own investment. And at that time, the tribe didn't have any money, and neither did the Site Corporation. And so we were able to find an investment firm who loaned all of the money to build a casino. But there was one stipulation that sort of stuck out, and it actually came back to haunt us several times, and that was there was going to be no revenue sharing. In order for the Site Corporation to get involved with the casino at that time, there was a management agreement that allowed the corporation to retain some of the dollars. But in that original agreement, when the investment firm took a look at that, they said they didn't want any money to be separated, and that anything that was left over was going to go against the principal of the loan. It worked out to the benefit of the tribe that happened, because in years we paid off the casino. So all the money that was generated through the casino ended up paying for the. That means about in the 15 years that we've been managing the business for the tribe, we started on a $25,000 grant. Last year we generated over $11.5 million in assets for the tribe. Now that's an accomplishment that can't be argued anywhere. I know a lot asking, where the money goes, where it's gone. I mean, we've had people tell us that we have offshore accounts. I mean, the stories are out there that all the board members were stealing the corporation, and that's not true. It went to good cause. Now that the casino is paid off, the tribe retains an asset. There will be a management agreement put in place that allows for some of the share that's generated in net profit to be retained by the corporation, because there are other projects in the future. Today I'm working on a project that is a gas kiosk for a new store. And as I guess Joe, the tribe should not be in all business. And that's kind of one of the businesses that I kind of was a little bit hesitant about taking on, but the project was already in process. So we're finalizing, we got a loan, we started construction, the weather kind of came in at the last minute, so we're gonna resume construction here probably in late March. The other project that I'm working on is a real exciting project. It's a broadband project. About 2 years ago, the tribe allowed Montana West to write the tribe into an ARA grant to bring a broadband trunk line through the reservation. And the tribe owns 12 of those fiber optic lines. And the project that I'm faced with right now is to bring broadband to all the homes and businesses on the reservation. I think it's exciting to work on this project because it's going to bring us into the future. There are other tribes, there's a few tribes around the country right now that have actually taken the responsibility of opening up their own telecommunication company. And that's what my goal is, to be able to bring this to the tribe so that they can manage their own telecommunications. The incumbents have been in place for too long. They're not providing the services that we need to do. And that's exciting because it's going to bring internet service at such a high speed to the community. It's going to upgrade Starlink cable and OP communication. We'll be able to have wireless and actually fiber to the communities on the reservation. It's a tremendous fact because it has to come in phases. The project Browning Exchange built. Once we get the Browning, we can then apply for the FCC regulations or the FCC status of the ETC, which is the eligible telecommunication carrier status. That's what Three Rivers has right now. In order for Three Rivers to exist here, that has to be from the FCC. Otherwise, you wouldn't be here. And that's what we're finding on all the reservations is we're in such a rural area that, you know, we're sort of under the power of the existing telecommunications carriers. So when Three Rivers takes money to build out their system, they bring it to South Montana and communities. So this way we can do it ourselves. I mean, who better can do it? We can do it ourselves and provide a service to the tribe, each tribal members, and you know it'll enhance our distant learning with our college, our public schools. You know, can do so many things for us, and plus, you know, we'll be moving into the future with fiber optics. So that's one of the most exciting projects that I'm over right now. So in its years of existence, has done a really good job for the tribe, I think. We realize that we have to get more information out there to the public because there still is a lot of misconception that rolls around, and we all get, you know, I just heard somebody the other day, I was at the pool working out, and I heard a guy come in and talk about, you know, what all the negative things about sighting. I just let him talk. I said, well, let me tell you the real story now. And after I told him, you know, what we are doing, it turned his thought around. And that's all it takes, a little bit of information out there. So there's good things to come. I think it's in 2005, the Sighting Corporation actually got an award from the Harvard study for its accomplishments. So there's one thing that people can't talk against, and that's the success of the corporation. It's doing what it's supposed to do. During the impasse that went on a couple of years ago and last year, into the last year, we operated business as usual. Our employees never lost a paycheck, and it's just, you know, it did its job. It did its job. So it's a positive thing for our community and our reservation. And I'm sure there's a lot of questions out there, but for time's sake, that's all I have to say.
Thank you very much. Positive things to happen through the private sector. Our final speaker is Dr. Joe Gladstone, whose field is working and teaching people how to develop private businesses on the reservations and how to gain cooperation with tribal governments. So, Joe?
No. Oh, this is still on.
Okay.
Anyways, I'm a business professor down in New Mexico State University, and my current work is actually in public business. But my background is in business administration and management. So I'm the type of person who teaches people how to get their MBAs and teaching to get their MBAs. So my research there is in American Indian business, and my curiosity is basically how do we become very successful business people while maintaining our Indian identity. So I was sitting here over this morning trying to think about what to say in the time that I have. I think about business and where it fits within our community is just simply looking at the statistics of our community. was able to pull up really quickly some statistics from the Census Department regarding Glacier County, which is, represents this area. And it has a, very high native population. 62% of this county alone is native, while the majority of Montana is 6.8%. Median income in the households here are $33,500 income per family here, while Montana as a whole is 46,000. Mind you, the Glacier Census Report isn't separating the reservation from and for other parts of the county, so this doesn't quite represent us exactly. What's important to me, what I really noticed, was that the per capita income within the county is $16,700. That's how much people on average make in this county as individual people. Montana isn't that much better as a whole, it's $25,000. Well, actually rounding up $26,000. We have a 32% poverty rate, while the county or as the state as a whole has a 19%. 84% of the people in Glacier County are high school degree and or high school diploma. Montana as a whole is 92%. Those with a college degree, at least a bachelor's, is 18%, whereas Montana is 30% as a whole. And this is what's really important for me when I start thinking about government, is how much of the labor force within the area is known as the civilian labor force. That is, those are on government contracts, or not government contracts, but those who can operate independently. Glacier County is 50% of the Glacier County's labor force. Montana as a whole is 64%. And so when you're looking at numbers like that, you're seeing how much we rely on government for our side and our own decisions. One thing earlier, this is kind of a common thing that I see throughout the nation when we talk governments. My area, we always talk about sustainability and sovereignty. Sovereignty being the key word. What does sovereignty mean? Well, it means making our own decisions, determining our own way of life, just deciding how we're going to live without having any influence on other people. And in our current system, the government, we really don't have true sovereignty. And to be truly sovereign, you need to have money. When you have economic power, when you have money, you have economic power. And so this is what kind of drives my work. And what I see the role of government within here is built to create a system where individual entrepreneurs, the individual people, individual families, individual people, even others who come in and hire other people, are able to start generating, bring money into the tribe and hopefully keeping it within the tribe. And some of you guys might freak out at this next three-letter word, but taxation. When you have a good, strong economy, you can actually tax some of these businesses. The government can generate its revenue through taxation, and actually, with the money that the government has, they can assert their power. And you don't have to rely as much as on the federal government or state governments for survival. I'm down in the South, and I'm down in Mexico, but I've also spent a lot of time in Arizona. And I see those tribes down there, and they have money, they do what they want to do. They have very big fire trucks, they have people that are all employed. Everyone's ever go south of Phoenix and goes down the Gila River community, you would probably think you're just in a Phoenix suburb. The only thing that shows that you're on the res is the sticker on the sides and Gila River community. And they are employing people off reservation. They are an economic driving force down there. And they have influence and they can make decisions in state politics. But they did that by building up their economy. They gave people autonomy, they could let the businesses grow. And pretty much Stephen Cornell, what he said this morning, I support that. That's actually the reason why I study my work. What Stephen's work is in governance. We need to create a government structure so that I can continue my work. My work is to teach business people. I teach the MBAs, I teach the other doctoral professors, I teach the undergrads. We have a whole bunch of students over there in the corner. A lot of them were business students. And that, you know, we need to have those people graduate, but have a job that they can use their degree for. We don't want them to leave this reservation. We want them to be able to stay here and use their degree to build our economies. But we do need a government system that's going to allow that. I was looking through our constitution and just seeing what the government's supposed to do. To manage all economic affairs and enterprises of the Blackfeet Reservation. And that's not, you know, professionally, that's not a very good statement to have in the Constitution. What we should have is a system that facilitates economic development and private business rights for people that acquire property and also have ways to protect their investments. An entrepreneur takes great risks. They're using their own money, their own time, their own sacrifices, and they want to build a business to be successful. If you don't have a government system that protects their interests, that allows the businesses to fail because of bureaucracy or no laws that protect any disagreements with others, and contract resolutions, create a system of security for banks to be able to provide loans so that people can actually build their businesses, then we're not going to really grow at all. We're going to be stuck. Our entrepreneurs will then take their entrepreneurial skills and move them off reservation, and we remain stuck. And so when I look at what we're supposed to do and what the government's supposed to do, as Cornell mentioned, he says create an environment of stable, fair, and effective rules reflecting and supporting the nation's culture and goals and inviting citizens and outsiders to improve the nation's future. And I support that. But I also bring in a business perspective on this. We're supposed to create a supportive business environment that protects an individual entrepreneur's interests and their business so that they can grow and succeed and be able to hire other people. So that we can pretty much bring in money, because at our current economy, it's not really easy to live the dreams that we want. And if we want to have a really good life, we all want more money. And we need to create an environment that's going to allow people to increase their income here. Because there's a direct relationship between income and quality of life, including health and other things. Prior to doing a business professor, I ran diabetes programs, I ran public health programs. And when you look at health, they always talk about the health problems we have in these communities. They always talk about how poor these tribal communities are, and they have diabetes. The poor, they have heart disease. The poor, they have alcoholism. The poor, they have all these problems. And then they address the problems. But I see we need to attack the part about being poor. We need a government system that allows businesses to be able to help us overcome this effectively. And so this is why I find that, you know, having this discussion now is very important for us, is to create a system for businesses to grow and thrive and help us become very powerful people economically. There's another group that's very good economically besides these tribes down in Arizona, and that's the Seminole tribe. They own the Hard Rock Cafe. And if you haven't heard of the Hard Rock Cafe, you don't have to go far to find them. They're all over the place. And so this is something that we all have within this tribe. I've talked to a lot of people. I was talking to one of my undergrad college buddies earlier. He's got his head clicking, thinking his ideas, and just going click, 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 click. Of course, I quizzed him. I'm a business professor, so I'm kind of mean that way. But you know, as a business, you know, those of you who've been on Facebook chat, you know, I kind of quiz you guys too. It's my major, business professor. But I don't do it to criticize you. I do it to get you to start thinking the processes. Like, you have these things, let's organize them and become very successful. And so this is clicking, other people, a lot of you out there, your heads are all clicking, but we need a system that allows those clicks to become businesses. So you can see these others to be able to get those competitive loans, get those grants and other things. Not even have to rely on grants. You can get a bank loan. And just like that one movie was, the Christmas movie, where you have two little $1 bills get together, and you know, have fun, and you have a whole bunch of those. A whole bunch of $1 bills. That's how it works. And so anyways, that's what I like to see. But it won't work if we don't have a system that supports that.
Thank you very much, Joe. Thank you, Patty. Thank you for being on our panel today. Discussion. It all has to do with building the economy and building the future for our nation. Thank you very much.
Okay, well, Here we are, 3:46. I know we're all pretty much played out, and it's been a long day tomorrow. Certainly want to welcome you back, bring your packets. I don't know if any of you have some comments, we have a little time. If you would, if not, what we're going to do is, we'll be starting again tomorrow, at around 9 o'clock. We'll have our opening prayer, and then we're going to kick right into our panels. So it's interesting. It's going to be interesting. It's really historical in terms of this particular session today. Through the advent of technology, we have reached out in no other way than we have done before, through our radio station and through the processes of the internet. Hopefully, we have people who are residing off the reservation logged in with the help of this team and our local radio station. I know during a lunch break, individuals were getting interviewed, so it's quite exciting to use that technology to go beyond the Moccasin Telegraph. Remember, for years, all we would wait for every week was the letter to the editor and the Glacier Reporter. That was our way of putting our pulse on what people were thinking. Well, now we know it's Facebook, and we know of the different sites there, and we take a look at that in terms of people that are voicing their opinions, their perspectives, and sometimes get downright dirty and tough. But that's the process too. And so I'm going to thank you all. Tomorrow we're going to get started again. Have a good evening. If you have some discussions, then please invite other people to attend. And we'll see you tomorrow. Good job.